spiked out. I could trip a referee. Tell by my attitude that I'm most definitely from.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another This Week in Startups. It's episode number 35. Can you believe we've been doing this for 35 weeks? Tyler, does it feel like 35 weeks? We're just getting warmed up, absolutely. Wow, what a show last night.
Yes.
Pretty amazing. We had the first Open Angel Forum last night. As you guys know, a couple of months ago, we started the jihad against the Keiretsu Forum and other forums which were charging entrepreneurs unbelievably thousands of dollars in order to present to angels. We called BS on that. They called BS on us. The whole thing ensued. They took the bait. Huge mistake. Yes. Just as an entrepreneur, if somebody fights with you and they have absolutely no ground and nobody knows who they are and they're not even in your space, do not engage them. If you fight up, that's good, right?
Right.
So Keiretsu Forum was the most established angel forum in the world. 20 cities, oh my God, they're the only people who can do it in the world. They're geniuses. It's the only option in town. We fight up, we throw a rock, boom, we hit the giant in the head. Sure enough, they start complaining and whining. They give interviews to everybody. They call my venture capitalists and threaten to sue me. All they do is enable us.
That was rather telling as well. As soon as the guy who you're attacking, their first reaction was to sue you and anyone else related with you and stop this. I think it exposes there must be a little bit of fear
and
there.
Then things got interesting. There was a disturbance in the force. This looks actually particularly good on the black background. And so then Tyler, Sith Lord Tyler and I, Darth Calacanis, we decided that we would go visit them. And we launched the Open Angel Forum almost as a goof, like we could do this.
Right.
It was sort of a joke. You and I just said, like, so we put up a Google Doc.
Right. Well, they took the position, it's so hard, you have no idea, this takes so much time.
That's why we charge people $6,000.
Please, do this in her spare time.
Exactly. We said, basically, Tyler and I laughed. We said, we do TechCrunch 50,000 applicants.
Right.
You know, we go through 1,000 applicants.
Right.
We, put 50 on stage in 2 days. I mean, this can't possibly be that difficult.
Right.
Long story short, 110 applications the first time. We put up a Google Doc. Yep. People fill out a Google spreadsheet.
Yep. Incredible
companies.
Yep.
We meet 2 weeks ago with 20 of them. Boil it down to 5 incredible companies who we're going to have a bonus episode right after this one. So if you stick around at 3 o'clock, we're doing a bonus episode with 4 of the 5. 4 of the 5 are going to be here, and you can actually see who presented last night and what they thought of it. 20 angel investors show up, including the investors in Google, Twitter, Facebook. You might have heard of some of the companies. Chris Sacca, Ron Conway. I mean, these are the greatest angels in the world. These are the guys who have never been to a Keiretsu Forum. They would never go. It's too low rent for them. And they fly in to come do it in LA here. Massive success.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
You know what else is a massive success?
What's that?
Bing. And I would like to thank our sponsor. It's a pretty good segue, right?
Oh, God.
Bing is our sponsor. Everybody knows that. This show has been doing fabulously and getting incredible amounts of downloads. And Bing, I do my Open Angel Forum search here, and Bing lets you save a bunch of clicks because when you go look at this, you get to see the preview. And they're building market share. And you saw the videos that I showed last time that you can actually, and see here, before I go click, I can actually see what's on the Open Angel Forum page. I get a little bit of a larger excerpt.
Brilliant.
Google doesn't have that feature. And
they probably will.
Well, I mean, listen, this is the interesting thing.
No, but they're making Google advance.
Exactly.
In ways that they knew they could, but they didn't want to. No one was forcing them to, and now they got to up their game.
You know, Bing called and said, we want to sponsor the show. And I said, okay, that's fine. And people said, oh, my God, how could you have Bing sponsor? Listen, they're a great, Microsoft's a great company, and they're doing something great in search, which is kicking Google in the behind and saying, let's try to innovate in search. Yeah. And they're doing lots of innovative stuff. So thank you to Bing for sponsoring the show. Also, thank you to DNA Mail. DNA Mail, everybody loves DNA Mail. If you're a startup, you shouldn't be hosting your own stuff. You should just put it on a cloud. Put it in the cloud, and you're all done. And they do that for a very affordable price. WebSpy, another great company. We had Jack on the show. He did a great job from Australia. And they monitor all the activity. They're a total log analysis solution for a startup or even bigger companies. Or at home now, they have the NoHo product, the Soho. What do you call it when it's a home office? Soho? Small office, home office? And those guys are doing a great job. And Power VPS, which is cloud computing, virtual private hosting, and that's $59 a month. TWiST viewers get 25% off for life with the discount code TWiST. And it is your giri. That's Japanese for?
Duty.
Your duty. It is your giri. Look it up on Wikipedia. G-I-R-I. Your giri. It is your duty as a viewer of the show to thank the sponsors on Twitter. They love that. So thank the sponsors Bing, DNA Mail, WebSpy, and PowerVPS. And I am going to, during the show, give a Nexus One phone, the Google phone, to somebody who thanks the sponsors. So if you thank them during the show, we'll give you Nexus One. Somebody, not all 1,000 people who do it.
Right.
Anyway, this is going to be a great show. We've got an amazing guest on the show. Brad Feld is one of my oldest friends in the internet industry. I met him probably in 95 or 1996 when I was 24 or 25 years old in New York, Silicon Alley. Hadn't even started the Silicon Alley Reporter yet and was a consultant to a group called Acme Ventures, which later became known as Flatiron Partners, which Brad was involved in. And they did companies like Cosmo and GeoCities, which was originally called Beverly Hills Internet. And anyway, he's been investing for a really long time. He's a blogger. You read his blog, Feld Thoughts. He is an angel investor. He's invested in over 300 companies. Welcome to the program, Brad.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
It's a pleasure. Finally, we got you to leave Colorado. And then you have a place in Alaska, too, right?
I have a place in Homer.
So you're basically in either Alaska or Colorado.
Actually, I'm all over the place.
Okay.
So, we have a couple of investments even in LA. So it's mostly just, that LA is so big.
Right.
That, you can't find yourself your way around.
In Alaska, I see these beautiful pictures. Are you like out in like the boondocks somewhere?
Yeah, I have a place in Homer, which is, if you think of Alaska as sort of this big thing, and this is Canada.
Yeah.
And these are the little islands that come down. Where my thumbs touch is where Homer is, right on the ocean.
Oh, wow.
And it's my wife, until she was 8, lived nearby. We don't have any family there, so we just go there and escape for a month a year in July. And with the miracle of modern technology, nobody knows where I am, so I can hang out up there and do my work and
absolutely
have a different experience.
And they actually have the internet up there?
They do. In fact, the internet up there is so good that when we bought a house there, 2001, 2002, and when I went to get broadband to my house, I called up the local ACS, which is the local phone affiliate, and I said, hey, can I get a broadband thingy, whatever? And they said, yeah, George will be up tomorrow.
Wow.
And George came up tomorrow, and George was like a 75-year-old guy who had been, doing telephones in Homer for his whole life. He says, yeah, I remember when they built this house, the orange pair and the white pair switched or something. It's like one of those, it's like, oh, geez. And, within 24 hours, I had DSL at my house in Homer, compared to, for example, in Colorado, where, it took, at the same time, I got a T1 line to my house in the mountains, and it took almost a year to get it run. So, it's good.
Let's talk a little bit about the angel space. You are an angel for a decade or more, maybe 15 years now.
Yep.
And I've just started doing some angel investing, and we both, synchronicity, had discussed this problem with payola for angel things. How did that first come on your radar?
Well, so I've had 2 chunks of time where I've primarily been an angel investor, 94 to 96, shortly after I sold my first company, and then 2006, 2007, between the time that we stopped investing in new companies at Mobius and I raised the newest fund that I'm part of, Foundry Group. And in those periods of time, and sort of through the other, I've always sort of intersected with organized angel groups that have ebbed and flowed. So I've always been, as an angel investor, pretty deliberate on my own. Have seen a few good angel groups, but I've seen a lot that end up being more like cocktail parties than actually structured investment activity. So, I've always shied away from that and always been pretty focused on real angel activity, where the goal of an angel investor should be to help the entrepreneurs get their businesses up and going. It's very simple.
Crazy concept.
The other thing which I've seen over the years, both as an angel investor and as a venture investor, is sort of this plethora of people and organizations who view the entrepreneur as their potential customer. Right. So they try to create businesses around the notion of providing services to entrepreneurs.
Right.
And some people do that in a way that's very constructive and helpful. Plenty of law firms that do work, for early stage companies, firms like Cooley Godward, who I've worked with for a very long time, do things very inexpensively for early stage companies, with the idea that as those companies grow and succeed, that'll grow into.
So those service providers provide value.
They're
necessary.
That's a good thing. But on the other side, there's just this endless number of people who are reaching into an entrepreneur's pocket to try to build a business. And the stupid thing about it is entrepreneurs have no money. Why would you ask the people that have no money?
Yeah, it's like these are the people who are trying to build something, and you're trying to get
crazy.
Yeah.
So I've always had this philosophy that I react to, and then there's a New York Times article about 6 months ago that talked about this practice of essentially pay to pitch, where you'd have angel groups that were organized, and they'd charge the entrepreneurs different amounts of money to come in and pitch to the angels. In addition, there were a couple of angel groups in Colorado. One, in the sort of 2000-ish time period, where I think at one point it probably had about 300 angels in it, and maybe 5 of them had made an investment in the last 24 months.
Right. So they pack in the room with service providers, retired people, people who want free food.
People that want free food, or people that just want to hang out with other people.
It was basically not angels, it was a tech meetup.
That's right, which is totally great. If it's a tech meetup, call it a tech meetup.
Right,
and
it's
do
not
that.
An angel group.
That's right. So when this New York Times article came out, I wrote a blog post, something like, angel group practices that make me vomit was, I think, the post. We just look it up on Bing. It's probably
right on Bing.
It's probably number 27 on Bing.
I'll Bing it, yeah.
But in any event, I got a ton of response to that, sort of violent response, same kind of thing. Some people very much like this, yes, I agree, this sucks, and other people sort of defending it and trying to argue, but it costs money to do this.
You have to vet the investments. How else would you?
You have to help them, and so we're helping them do it better. Da, da, da. And so I had a very negative reaction to it. One of my close friends, David Cohen, who founded Techstars in Boulder, I was one of the founders with him in 2006. Part of the reason he started Techstars was because he had started to make angel investments. He made a couple, and he really didn't like the dynamics. He didn't like the sort of, the extended group of angels in the angel group that he was part of which almost nobody invested. He also didn't like this idea that he was investing, but then having sort of no interaction, no engagement, no relationship with the entrepreneurs and with the other angel investors. And so, part of the experience that we've had with Techstars is not just the value of an angel investment, but the value of mentors and the value of successful entrepreneurs helping first-time entrepreneurs get past those first couple of stages, which I've always, as an individual investor, viewed was my responsibility. And some entrepreneurs don't want that, and other entrepreneurs soak it up, and I tend to invest in the ones that want it.
Yes, of course.
And so, sort of in the swirling around of all this, you sort of hit on the thing about the same time.
Yeah, it came on my radar, and I was like, wow, this is BS. I'm going to write something about that. And then all of a sudden, this whole movement starts
sort of blew up. So and I've had a lot of conversations. You have a lot of respect for people who are real angel investors, even if they're part of these groups. And I think the message that I tried to get across to the people that I've talked to is that it's not necessarily, the dynamics themselves aren't bad. The justification is what doesn't make sense.
Right.
And the argument that, well, there is no venture capital seed investing is just false. Or the idea that there are no angel investors that are making early stage investments is false. Or the idea that, entrepreneurs don't have access to these kind of investors is false, right? I mean, it's that there's a quality curve, and crappy ideas and crappy entrepreneurs, where I'm defining crappy subjectively, people who aren't willing to go out and hustle. Right. When I first met you, you defined hustler, right? You weren't going to let anybody slow you down.
No.
But you hadn't had any success.
No.
And,
Zero.
What you did was you just walked through walls. That's the kind of thing that an angel investor is getting excited about versus your presentation is pretty and sort of your market sizing document, whatever.
You want to invest in somebody who you think is going to never say die, and when there's a wall, they're going to knock it down, hop over it, go around it, whatever it is. So now Techstars has become a juggernaut. This has become like the Y Combinator of the Southwest.
Well, we've done 39 investments. We have a program in Boulder in the summer, a program in Boston in the spring, which we just closed our applications for. And we just announced recently that we're doing a program in Seattle in the fall. So we'll have 3 programs a year.
Amazing.
So about 30 companies going through the program. And part of with Techstars, what we've tried to do, and it's very focused on software, internet, early stage. That's the typical type of entrepreneur and company. But we're very focused in those geographies of trying to integrate the entrepreneurial community.
Right.
So when I lived in Boston from 83 to 95, and when I was in Boston in the early 90s, there was a very, and was starting to do my angel investing activities, a very vibrant entrepreneurial community. There were plenty of people that had made a lot of money, They were still active as entrepreneurs. There was a ton of software internet activity going on, and everybody sort of up and down the chain participated. So you had lots of first-time entrepreneurs coming out of the system from MIT or from Harvard or wherever, BU. You had lots of people who were, like me, I was in my late 20s, who was writing, $25, $50, $100,000 checks to these companies. Right. And then you sort of keep working your way up the curve. And you had experienced entrepreneurs who had 2, 3, 4 successes and some failures who were coming back in. A good example is a guy, Sean O'Sullivan, who was the founder of MapInfo at RPI when he was in his early 20s, and went public, and he made a lot of money, and then he started a couple of companies and angel funded a bunch of companies.
This sort of is the process of building an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
So now this is
very vibrant. The Boston dynamic was interesting, though, right? Because in Boston, somewhere in the late 90s, that all stalled.
Yeah.
And I remember I left in 95. There was no correlation between the stall and me leaving.
Right.
But there was a point in time where Boston was probably ahead of the Valley in terms of,
Certainly,
internet.
in terms of the amount of venture capital there, it was second only to the Valley, and the amount of brain share between MIT and Harvard and BU and tons of intelligent young people. But it did drop off.
Something happened, and so having been in Boulder from 95 forward, I saw a couple of waves in Boulder. And when I moved to Boulder in 95, there was a legacy of entrepreneurship in Boulder. There were a bunch of storage companies that came out of Boulder. There was a lot of telecom in Denver. There were plenty of very smart technical people. Boulder, specifically as a city, has the highest per capita population of computer scientists and the highest per capita population of PhDs, partly because of the national labs that are there, partly because of the university, partly because of just the community.
Right.
Boulder's also a very individualistic community, right? Yeah. It's a total hippie town.
Yep.
Going back, and a lot of the natural foods industry came from Boulder. And if you sort of look at it, the joke I like to make is that the hippies that were going across the country ran out of gas, in Boulder, and it was a pretty place.
Yep.
We'll stay here. And we can cue the current medical marijuana jokes as we see the proliferation of those businesses growing everywhere in Boulder right now, so to speak.
Legal in California. They just didn't do a vote, Tyler.
Keeps going back and forth.
But they did a vote this week in California.
Well, it's legal.
It was like 4-3, and they're like, yeah, it's legal. And I was like, wait a second. Hello? What?
Yeah, except for the state gets to enforce federal laws if they want. So
if they want,
it's
right.
legal,
it's
except unless they wanted to.
Yeah.
It's the same as it was before.
They're basically saying, this is what I heard, Obama doesn't want to do it in the first term because it would screw up his second term potentially, but in the second term, it's on.
It'll be an interesting second term.
And it would just be like...
That would be a helpful platform probably for him to run on in terms of a certain demographic.
Listen, weed and gambling, let's do it, tax it like crazy, regulate it like crazy, let's balance the budget. Let's build better schools. It's going on anyway. Anyway.
So that's not a critical part of the Techstars program, but
no.
These are young people, so who knows?
So there could be some stuff going on. They could be playing poker and smoking weed.
But what I can guarantee you there's plenty of poker. The premise behind Techstars sort of that emerged in 2005, 2006 is that Boulder as an entrepreneurial community had a real renaissance post-bubble. So in 95 to 2001 there were plenty of successes. People made 10, 15, 20 million dollars. So all of a sudden you had some younger entrepreneurs who had some money. You then had a bunch of people who had success have failures sort of through the bubble. So you have this cycle where you build some muscle, right? It's one thing to be successful.
These guys are becoming gladiators.
Yeah, you get run over by a truck, you get back up.
Yep.
And then by about 2003, as everybody starts to kind of wander back in, you've got a bunch of people sort of in the mid to late 20s to early 40s, mid 40s, that have had successes and failures, that are still in the game, that love the community they're in. And all of a sudden, there's an opportunity to start to organize across that whole spectrum and get all of those people working together. So the ingredient that's needed in an entrepreneurial community to make it perpetuate is new people coming into the entrepreneurial community.
Yeah.
And in Boulder, we only have 150,000 people in Boulder, so it's not a growing population. It's for a variety of reasons, including the fact that the city doesn't want it to expand.
Right.
So we decided, screw it, we'll just import people.
Right. Perfect.
And the original Techstars program, I think only maybe 1 or 2 of the 10 original teams were from Boulder. All the rest of them were from around the world, or mostly around the country, a few around the world. As part of that dynamic, we had great success the first year. As part of that dynamic, we started thinking about, well, is this a Boulder thing, or is this something that happens in other entrepreneurial communities? And what are some other entrepreneurial communities that have a lot of the natural resources that we're talking about, but are fragmented? And, I had a lot of experience with Boston. I knew Boston well. We had lots of friends in Boston. And Bill Warner, who was the founder of a company called Avid, which anybody that does anything with video knows Avid. Bill created the first Avid. He's a successful Boston entrepreneur, and he was the kind of entrepreneur that when I was a young entrepreneur in my early 20s, I wanted to know Bill.
Right.
And I would go to a talk of Bill's, and
yeah, sure, you were a fan.
I was a Bill Warner fanboy, and he got to know Techstars through an angel investment he made in one of the Techstars companies in Boulder, and he said, we got to have this in Boston. And the we got to have this in Boston was totally a function of him coming to Boulder, seeing how this entrepreneurial ecosystem had started to become integrated, and saying, gosh, if we could just put something here to work on, that would do it. The last point I'll make on it is that part of the magic of it is it's only for 90 days. So if you ran programs like this all year long in the same community, you'd wear people out.
Right.
So Techstars in Boulder in the summertime is an event. Everybody gears up for it. The new class comes. There's a bunch of things around it.
Dinners,
people put a lot of energy into
events.
it. The mentors, spend up their time. And then, through the fall, the companies get funded and established, and people still stay engaged, but the level of intensity isn't there again till the next summer. And so that sort of rhythm, we believe, works in any community. So it's not that Techstars is the heart of the entrepreneurial activity. It's a very tangible thing for people to work on. And
it's like a catalyst. It's like you give it a good jump start, and half of the people wind up doing something great. Man, mission accomplished.
But think about the level of integration and between the new people in the community and everybody else. And we'll relate it back to the angel stuff in a sec. The other thing is, you and I, we have fun hanging out, going, you think about entrepreneurial events, you go to only so many cocktail parties. You got a kid, you want to spend time with your wife, you got a business, you got other things you're doing. The 9th award ceremony for entrepreneurship that you get invited to, you're like,
I'm done.
Nothing's happening here. I'm just going to show up and have a couple of drinks and be bored for 2 hours. And what you want is you want to work on something.
Right.
And so the fun of these types of programs like Techstars is that as an experienced entrepreneur, you get to help these first-time entrepreneurs actually create their company.
Yeah.
And that's the real turn on. In addition, if you and I haven't worked on something for 6 or 7 years, and we happen to both be mentors for a particular company, all of a sudden we're working on a project together.
Yep.
And that's much more fun than let's just hang out and whatever, send email, how you doing, whatever.
Whoever speak on the stage at the D conference.
So that's part of, that's part of, again, when you tie it back to the Open Angel Forum, that's part of the thing that sort of in watching David and working with David and being David's partner in Techstars, watching this evolve, the dynamics around it were so fascinating because I got to watch somebody who had been a successful entrepreneur and then had a failure and then had a third company that was modestly successful, who had started to make angel investments, sort of find his way and really, catch fire on what was exciting.
It's amazing what he's done.
And then the network of angel investors who have invested in Techstars-related companies. You mentioned Chris Sacca, who's a great example, Jeff Clavier, Dave McClure.
These are the power angels.
People that, from not in California, but also other places in the country. Will Herman, who's a Boston angel, it's been very successful, that's invested in a number of the companies. The thing that you start to see is that you build community around the investing activity in support of the entrepreneurs rather than sort of the other way around, which is that you've got a bunch of people who are doing some organized activity and the entrepreneurs of the entertainment.
Right.
And that's what, when you started sort of railing about the Open Angel Forum construct was so powerful because it was exactly on that same theme.
Right.
Which is, let's take the entrepreneur, let's celebrate the entrepreneur.
Right.
Let's give the entrepreneur real resources to help them get going.
Right.
And we can't do it for every single entrepreneur. We don't do it for every kind of entrepreneur. You can't.
It's not your God-given right to come, to be accepted. No. Not every,
You got to earn it. You got to fight your way in. It's competitive. There's a constrained amount.
But if you get it, it's going to be a jump start.
Accelerates
this could take
your
5 years out of your career.
Exactly.
So we could make a special announcement at this point in the program. We have a special announcement infographic, I think, in the. If we wanted to do a special announcement, we could do that. We press a button. Crack me up. We could do the 20th Century Fox theme. I love that. It's like a professional show. We have themes and all kinds of stuff.
This is a very serious studio that you got here.
Absolutely, very serious. Many cameras and everything. So, big announcement. Very happy to report that the second Open Angel Forum will take place in Colorado.
Yep.
And that you and Dave Cohen of Techstars are going to host it. Amazing. A little golf clap for that, huh? Very nice. A little golf clap. So that's fantastic. We're going to do it in February, and then we'll put all the information online. But this will be the second one. Yep. We'll do it 3-4 times a year, and then there'll be and I'll fly out for the first one, and I'll try to get to maybe 2 a year, and then we're going to do it in San Francisco and some other cities, all with the highest quality people, all with maybe 12. We think 12 angel investors is the right number. We had 20 last night. I don't think we can get much bigger than that, but just keep it nice and high end, and nobody in the room who's not an angel investor.
He made me think of something interesting, which is there's 2 types of investor angel types, and the ones that were there last night were the ones who are what he's referring to, get really excited and passionate about seeing a young company do something because they're doers themselves, and they get inspired again, remembering when they were doing their company, and the chance to work as opposed to the angel investor types that show up and perceive it as an alternative to shorting the NASDAQ or something, or some higher risk, but just some portfolio kind of thing that they're doing. They get engaged and
the value of it.
Right.
That's a great insight, Tyler.
I think it's an important point. The other.
Every time Tyler has an insight, that jingle plays.
You get a gold star too. Is that good?
Absolutely. Well, show it again. I want to show. My mom and dad are in the studio, so show the insights from Tyler jingle one more time. If you don't mind. Mom, I'm showing my mom and dad. That's. Can you leave the graphic up for a second? I just want to show my mom what that is actually. That is Tyler and I on the Sydney Bay Bridge, and you can press it one more time. Yeah. And so that's when you go on the Sydney Bay Bridge, and that's the Opera House there. And behind the light bulb is my wife, but we don't put her picture out there because we don't like to have the stalkers or whatever. But we're wearing headsets and these goofy hats, and they're like, you have to take a picture. So we decided we'd make it look as goofy as possible, and so we look like we're on the special ed bus tour of the Bay Bridge. But you climb the Bay Bridge in Australia, and so that's Tyler's insights there. Let's take a call. Let's try to help an entrepreneur. Can we send the first caller through? What is the graphics budget on this program? We have too many graphics now. Okay, so we have our first caller who is calling in from the 917, a number I recognize. That is the cell phone area code of NYC. Ryan, where are you calling from?
I am calling from NYC. I'm calling from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn in the house. Where in Brooklyn?
Prospect Heights.
Okay, respect. I'm from Bay Ridge originally, and Brooklyn, we go hard.
That's right.
So tell me, Ryan, you're here. You've got Brad Feld, who's invested in over 300 companies, and myself, who's invested over 3 companies, and ran a couple of them. You have a question for us on Ask Jason.
Well, I have a few questions.
Okay, let's start with one.
Okay, so should I get some background?
Sure.
Background?
Short background and a question.
It's important.
Yeah.
It's important. So I'm an architect, and my partner is also an architect, and we've found some pain points in our industry, and we're trying to solve them with a web application, a website, basically. And since we don't have a technical background, meaning we're not programmers, we're not computer science majors, we were wondering if we needed a CTO or if we can just outsource and find a development shop and go to them.
Okay.
And we're also wondering how that would affect our ability to get funding.
Yeah. So this is a great question. I'll summarize your question. Tell me if I've got it right. Sure. You have great domain expertise in architecture. You are 2 architects. You would like to make tools, technology for architects. However, you're not technical. You're not programmers. Did I summarize correctly? Right. And you would like to know what do you do now? Because you have great domain experience. I would assume you think you know what architects want, what the technological opportunities are, but you do not have the ability to build it yourself. So will investors be interested in somebody with domain expertise without technical expertise? I'm going to defer to Brad on this one. Brad, if you heard a pitch from somebody who's like, hey, we're architects and we have an idea and here's the product that needs to be made, but we don't have anybody to make it, is that just a huge red flag for you? You're sort of like come back when you have a technologist on your team?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd encourage you to do is strongly go find a technical co-founder. So outsourcing the product build, while it can be successful, the probability of it being successful is very low.
Right.
Relative to getting a third partner into the mix early on that believes in you guys, that can work with you guys, that can be the technical lead for your business. The domain expertise is hugely important whenever you're going after a vertical market like you're talking about. But I think you see so many times the lack of the right mixture on that entrepreneurial team.
Right.
And if you rely on somebody who's not, living the creation of the business the same way you are, 20 hours a day, this is the only thing they're thinking about.
Right.
This is what they're all
Properly
about.
incented.
Properly incented, big equity in the company, and a real partner with you.
Yeah.
The chance of you getting the product you want is lower. And the chance of it really being something where, the number of stories where, you outsourced it to somebody and you don't know how to manage the technical build, so you kind of get smoked by that, outsourcing organization.
It's basically not going to work. It's a huge red flag. He would never invest in it, and I would agree with him. That being said, let me give just a couple of pieces of advice there, and I want to get a follow-up question to Brad, which is, so you have to get a technical partner in there. However, I wonder, Brad, have you ever invested in people who do not have domain expertise in a market, but are incredible technologists and have built really great products for that vertical and are getting traction?
Yes, absolutely.
So
the opposite is true.
The opposite is true.
Yeah.
They would rather have technical people who can build great products and listen to the customer rather than just have the customers. And what this boils down to is ideas are easy, execution is hard. You guys have ideas, you don't have the ability to execute. So I get these calls all the time. I have an idea, Jason. I want to make this iPhone app. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. You got to invest in this company. It's the greatest thing ever. And I say, well, who's going to build it? And they say, oh, we'll get somebody to build it. I'm like, well, why wouldn't I invest in that guy or that girl, And so you have to go find a technical advisor. So then your next question is, or the next question you should ask is, how do I find a technical advisor?
How do I do that? Well,
yes. Is that your question?
Well, that is my next question, because I've been shopping it around in New York, and we even pitched to the New York PHP community, and people are interested. But if you're talking to technologists in New York City right now, pre-funding, it's like they don't want to hear it. And we're also very passionate about this space. It's about sustainability, and we want to find somebody who's also interested, and that's another challenge because, to be honest, most technologists we run into, they don't even know what we're talking about. So any advice on how to overcome that?
Well, the first thing I would do looking for a technical advisor, or a CTO or a technical founder, is I would go to LinkedIn and I would look for people who have recently been at a company that's been sold or recently left a company, like somebody maybe an ex-Googler, ex-Yahoo, ex-Microsoft person who's maybe made a little bit of money, and now they're like, hey, I would like to do a startup thing. You could even post it on Craigslist. We're technical founders. You can go to Hacker News, which is the Y Combinator news site. You're going to have to basically hustle to find a technical co-founder, and that's your first test as an entrepreneur. If you can't find a technical co-founder, you're not going to be able to manage some guys in Bangalore, making your site, or Eastern Russia. Brad, you have thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of the first challenges when you're putting together a business is getting the right people around the table. And it's always really easy to sort of find your friend and with a friend or two friends say, let's go start a business. But the characteristics and skill sets don't necessarily give you what you need to get off and running. So finding that technical co-founder, the best chance of you finding them is going to be somebody who's 1 or 2 degrees of separation from you. So somebody that is a friend of a friend, or somebody that's kind of tangentially to your network, versus sort of the random overtures. But you need to do both. You need to go after both and recognize that the first person that says, yes, I'm interested in working with you, might actually be a crappy technical founder. So some of it is you have to actually really view it as the cliche is it's a marriage when you have a partnership like this. In the same way that you've got to go find, your spouse or your partner, that those dynamics play out. You're really going to have to be working and living with this person. But, Jason said, you got to be scrappy and you got to go do it. Some of it is the test of getting a company started. Yeah. And
are you willing to pull the trigger? Yeah.
Well, actually, I've already done some of what Jason, because I've heard Jason talk about this with some other on some other TWiST episodes, and I actually went in and looked for some ex-Price Grabber people and some ex-Shopzilla people. I searched LinkedIn. I actually have a technical advisor who could help, but his company just got sold a few months ago, and so he's in the process of migrating data from one package to another or something like that. So, but ideally, I would like him to come on board, and he's well experienced, CTO level at a multi-million-dollar company, 20 years plus experience. So, but I have to wait until he he finishes his job and
well, but part of him finishing his job is going to be his desire to work with you. So some of it is you laying siege to him. If he's the guy you want, go get him. And if he says, "Look, I can spend a little time with you in the next 3 months because I got to finish this other thing, but I'm ready to commit to do it," that's different than him saying, "Call me in a year," because call me in a year basically says I'm not interested. But if you can stay after it.
Let me ask you a question, Ryan.
Sure.
Did Biggie wait till he had a record contract to rap?
No, Jason.
He just broke it down. He did it on the street corner. He did it in the club. You don't need to get a record label. Just get out there, and you got to find the person. And no excuses is the bottom line. None. You'll find it.
None whatsoever. I mean, we're actually building a prototype right now.
That's good.
In India. We're actually scouting some teams in New York to see if we can get a better connection, because a rather person we can talk to face who gets us or understands us to a certain extent, and we can at least get the product on the market, and then we can always bring on a CTO later on and
I'll give you
really out some things.
Let me give you another piece of advice in this regard. When I started the first one of my first companies, the magazine company, I didn't know anything about PageMaker, which was the Quark Express at that time, the layout thing. I didn't know anything about printing. I knew nothing. So what I did was I basically tried to learn every single job function myself, got up to like 60% of like a good at it, 70% good at it, and then I found somebody because I kept trying to figure out how do you do PageMaker, and I looked for PageMaker people to ask questions to, and then finally I would hire one. Then I would go into sales. I would do sales poorly for, and do like 50% or 60% of what a salesperson could do, and then finally find somebody who could do sales. Then when I got those people into the company, they couldn't BS me because I knew 60 or 70% of what their job was. I was 60, 70% of an HTML designer, 60, 70% of a writer at that time, 60, 70% of an editor at that time, 60, 70% of a fact checker. So actually what you're doing in terms of doing the mock-ups, doing the design, maybe even doing some light HTML, maybe even learning how the iPhone app, at least you do that stuff. When the technical person comes along, they're going to go, oh, let me handle that, but at least you can have a really intelligent conversation with them, like what the iPhone is capable of doing and how to use the API.
Exactly.
So,
Ryan, let me give you an example like that. One of the Techstars companies from Boulder in 2009 is a company called Everlater, and the two co-founders of Everlater, Nate and Natty, neither of them knew how to program. They're both on Wall Street in some sort of investment banking role, associate roles or whatever, and they decided they hated what they were doing and they wanted to create a company. They love to travel. They wanted to create a new type of travel website because none of the travel websites were what they wanted. And so the two of them came up with the idea, and then they learned how to program.
Yeah.
And actually wrote the first version, which probably the very first couple of iterations were 10% or 20.
Yeah.
I mean,
they were pretty bad.
They weren't pretty, but they were good enough so that they could start to entice other people in, and they ultimately attracted a third partner who is a very strong developer. And that allowed them to sort of start to grow from there. So, one of the things I'd offer you if you want, my email address is brad@feld.com. Just send me an email and I'll hook you up with Nate and Natty. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you about sort of how they went from something that, they knew nothing about programming to a point where they were, really attracting other people to them.
Ryan, what's your Twitter?
What's
your Twitter account, Ryan? You have a Twitter account?
Why not green? Why not green?
Why not green? So twitter.com/whynotgreen. If you are a listener to the show, whether you're listening live or on the podcast or on YouTube, Why Not Green? It is your Geary. It is your obligation to follow Why Not Green. It is your entrepreneurial Geary, your duty, and you will go follow them right now, like I will. And
you already follow me, Jason.
Yeah. Why Not Green? WHYNOTGREN. Okay. Good job on the show.
Thank you.
We will follow you. If anybody knows anybody who's into architecture or green stuff and wants to be their co-founder, please do contact them.
Please send them my way.
All right.
Thank you.
We will talk to you in a couple of weeks and see how you're doing.
All right, great. Thank you, Jason.
Get people call back in a couple weeks later. It's becoming
great.
like a whole thing.
Great.
All right. So now the next part of the program is Jason's Shark Tank. You ever see this TV show Shark Tank? You know what I'm referring to.
I know the show. I saw 1 or 2 episodes.
Terrible. It's terrible. On this show, well, here's the intro. TV show from television's NBC or ABC or somebody put it. And as you can see, I am one of the judges on the show. No, I am not. Mark Burnett's people call me.
And you ran screaming from the building?
No, they call me. Jason, we love what you do, blah, blah, blah. We want you involved in the program, blah, 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 ABC, we want to do meetings. They call back again. Oh, my God. I put them in touch with Tyler. We'll set something up. And then what they do? They disappear. They never call back. Very professional, Mark Burnett. Anyway, I'm showing Mark Burnett how to do a proper television show here with Jason Shark Tank, which is people will pitch us for 60 seconds.
Yep.
And then we'll tell them if we would invest in it or not and why and how, all that kind of stuff. Unlike the Shark Tank where they try to beat up and destroy the entrepreneurs, we're going to do what investors or angel investors or fellow entrepreneurs would do, which is try to build them up and actually help them. Do we have the Shark Tank caller? Okay. Hello, Tyler. Hello? Okay. Technical difficulties. There we go. I've got a call. It's ringing. Speakerphone. Tyler. Tyler, you there?
Hit the speaker again.
Oh, speaker again. Hello, Tyler.
Yes.
Whoa, hello. Okay. We got you. Okay, so this is Tyler.
Yes, it is.
You're calling from the 310, which I recognize as Los Angeles.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The Monica.
Yes. You've been listening to the program for a while, or is this your first episode?
I have. I've been watching for quite some time. I think maybe the first one I tuned in was around, I think it was the Mark Sister episode.
And do you have a favorite episode?
I really liked that episode. I got a lot out of what he was kind of describing and talking about team building and the importance of team and, in contrast to other VCs, etc.
Good. You have a favorite segment on the program? Perhaps Tyler's Insights?
Definitely insights from Tyler.
Yeah, of course. Everybody loves those. Okay, so you know the rules of the game. You're going to have 60 seconds. You will explain. There's no pressure, aside from the fact that Brad's invested in 300 companies, and yours could be 301 or not. There's no pressure except for the fact that there are 500 people watching live, and 25,000 people will listen to this in the next month. There's no pressure there. And there's no pressure for the fact that this will be recorded forever if you do a horrible job. And for all eternity, there will be a blog post with your name on it, with your pitch and your video there. Are you ready to do it?
I am. It's 30 seconds or 60 seconds?
A full 60 seconds, but if you end early, that's always good too.
Bonus points for being shorter.
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, 3, 2, go.
All right. Thanks, Jason. So the problem Mingly is trying to solve is that vital follow-up opportunities with your contacts are often missed in today's avalanche of emails and tweets and other social network updates. So Mingly's solution is an online personal assistant / to-do list that actively reminds you to reach out to your highest priority connections and gives you the relevant reasons to do so, kind of by pushing you information like Google Alerts that are of interest to your contacts. As a result, you're building more meaningful relationships and creating social capital. So if anyone's familiar with books like, Dave Carnegie's book as well as Keith Ferrazzi's Never Eat Alone, it's critical to be constantly pinging contacts and connections and connecting with them personally. So that's basically the overview of Mingly.
Okay, so you did it very quickly. There were things in there that I was nodding my head with. The only thing I didn't get out of it exactly, because I get the sense that this is some kind of a plug-in for Outlook or a web-based service that helps me keep track of the people I've sent email to and sort of do relationship building, but you didn't get to how it manifests itself. So how does it manifest itself?
Okay, so Mingly is a kind of like a to-do list, a dashboard that is also extended through a widget, which will have some sort of Gmail overlay and also potentially a Facebook app and eventually Outlook plugin. But basically, it lives kind of self-contained in this widget as well as dashboard, and it connects to these Google contacts to monitor new contacts you make, as well as email that's been sent or received, as well as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn.
Okay, so I will ask everybody in the chat room to rate your ability to present on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'll ask them to rate your idea on a 1 to 10. And so everybody who's in the chat room just rate pitch equals 1 score, and idea equals another score. And you're getting 6s and 7s across the board, a couple of 4s. So people that's pretty good for a first shot. Brad, what do you think of the pitch? If he told you this at a conference, you got your 30 seconds, would you want to hear more?
So I would be interested in hearing more because I'd ask you more questions. With one caveat, which is in recognizing that you're pitching over the telephone, you're very stiff sounding, so kind of scripted. You were careful with words. You had a couple of adjectives in there that were kind of long, and I don't remember which ones they were. But kind of the idea, it didn't feel like you had internalized your thing and you were totally passionate about it. It felt more like you were trying to get a very well-defined message across. And for me, and I think for most people in that sort of first 30 seconds, having it tight is good, but having it real is equally important. I want to feel your emotion about the excitement of the idea. So that didn't feel like it was coming across to me.
That's kind of like Japanese jazz.
I think we got another T-shirt. It's kind of like Japanese jazz. It's like a wheelchair at Disneyland.
Right.
Tyler, it's kind of like Japanese jazz?
Yes.
That's a great insight.
Yes.
Wow. Somebody working the track. We lost Alex is going to work in New York. We lost the timing. So whoever is going to be doing the show going forward, this weekend I would like you to do 100 insights from Tyler. Say 5 Hail Marys as well. So explain what you mean by it's kind of like Japanese
jazz.
Jazz, right.
Japanese
this
jazz.
Is, just so you know,
Yes.
I know that in Tyler's mind that metaphor is all
means
you need to
something.
say,
Yes.
but to the rest of us,
Yes.
we're confused.
Right.
Everybody's dumbfounded in here. So explain what you mean.
Japanese jazz. Japanese are very technical.
Yes.
And they take something and they will do it in golf in the same way. They get very masterful about the technique and the exact right way to hit the ball and the right way to hit the notes but yet Ornette Coleman and Parker and Miles Davis, all these guys.
It doesn't have soul.
Right, you got to have that real. It's you. It's coming from you and feeling that passion. And that's different than a technically good pitch. I think this was technically textbook, very good pitch, but it missed that X factor soul, which Brad was referring to.
In an instructive example at Techstars, we do this thing that makes everybody batshit, which is that every time somebody new comes in the room, all 10 companies give their elevator pitch. So every time a new mentor shows up, every time there's a new evening event for the first couple of weeks, and it makes you crazy. It makes not the mentors. The mentors find it valuable. The entrepreneurs, for the first couple of times, you're embarrassed, you're uncomfortable, you don't have the words quite right,
you're incomprehensible,
or you forget your memorized script. And, But by about the 20 or 30th time that you're sort of extemporaneously doing it, all of a sudden you click into a totally different gear. And you no longer think about the words, you no longer think specifically about what you're saying, but instead you're really comfortable with it. And what I think from just pure pitch perspective, the more you wear your idea, the more it fits you and you're really comfortable with it, the easier it is for somebody like me to say, tell me more.
Right.
Versus...
You believe it.
Yeah, I want to know more about what you're thinking. I may not be in love with it yet, but I'm kind of in love with your excitement about it.
Right. This is something I used to tell people after I did Silicon Alley Reporter magazine, which was you have to be the brand. You have to live the brand. I would wear a Silicon Alley Reporter t-shirt every day. I would drop off the magazines. You would never see me without a stack of magazines in my hand. I would be taking pictures for the magazine. You got to live it. And so there's a little disconnect between your product and you living it. But putting that aside,
let's talk about the product.
Let's talk about the product for a second, because I am fascinated by relationship management and CRM. And I was using for a while Getting Things Done for Gmail. So I do think there's an opportunity here to make the unlimited Gmail and the unlimited communications work more effectively. How does your product work?
Okay, so the kind of the key to all of this is driving all this noise, all this avalanche of information, filtering it and then deriving it into the to-do list. So it's basically generating alerts. Like the dashboard essentially is a to-do list with alerts that have been generated either because, A, you haven't communicated with that person over a certain period of time. It could be that I just met someone, I added them on Facebook, we automatically detect that and say, hey, you should send a follow-up, note that this is a good contact to follow up with. Because usually and I personally actually came to the problem because I'd meet great people, but just, never, that the follow-up didn't happen because I got busy or distracted or whatever it was. So how it works, again, is it monitors these networks, prompts you to follow up with, if it's been more than a certain period of time, as well as gives you, Google Alert type alerts on relevant information about that person. That I should say, hey, Jason, this is an article that might be interesting about that Canon Would you get the 70 or the
D7?
I don't know if you have a Nikon, but okay.
If you looked at Blippy, you would know. Yes, the D7. I got the D7. Right.
Got it. Okay.
So I understand. So you have these alerts that look and say, hey, you haven't spoken to Jason in a while. You met him at this party 6 months ago. He just bought a D7 camera. He just put up these pictures of his kids. It's a good idea. It's going to be a lot in the execution. I think you're going to scare people by saying to-do list, because that is something that people have been working on since 1983 or 84 with Sidekick on Windows, and it's never really become a business, to-do lists. That's like a feature of a product. So, and there was also a company called Zobni that was at TechCrunch 40 that did email analysis and tried to do this, like these are the people you get emails from on the largest percentage, these are the people who you were getting emails from a year ago, and people were very excited about that function. So even just an analysis of my email telling me week by week who are the top 5 people I was communicating with would be really interesting to me, and I could scroll through that because there might have been like 10 investors I talked to about Mahalo in the A round, the B round, now, and I don't even remember.
Yeah. So one of the things that I toss in, I'm an investor in a company called TWiST, which has what you're describing sounds like a subset of what they're providing. They're sort of in the same general domain that Zobni is in. There's also a Techstars company called Filterbox, which was just bought by a company called Jive, that does essentially social media monitoring against individual people. There's a lot of people that have dealt with the monitoring side of the equation, and it's very, very complex. And so I think you have 2 pieces you have to kind of figure out where you're going to spend your time. One is living within the applications and the stream of the emails or the messages that you're using to determine who your contacts that you need to have interactions with are. And the second side of the problem is actually doing all the mining of the data that exists in real time on the internet, whether it's web-based data or Twitter-based data or something else, and linking it up to all those people. Those are kind of 2 big separate problems, and I'd encourage you to focus on one or the other as the starting point.
Awesome. So you got a lot of good feedback there. Everybody can go follow you. You have a Twitter account, which is getmingly, MINGLY, and your domain name is ming.ly.
Tyler, do you have something up and running at this point, or is it still just an idea?
We have a prototype that's been built, and our alpha is scheduled to be coming out in the next 30 to 60 days. We're going to be presenting as a show-off at TWiST Up, and that's the kind of roadmap at this point.
Send me an email when you have the alpha up and there's something I can play with.
Yep. Awesome. Great job, Tyler. Very good. All right. He did a good job. That was nice. There we go.
Japanese jazz. I like that.
It's like a wheelchair at Disneyland. That was his comment another time.
Like betting with the Aztecs.
All right, I need to have a to you to you for pithy comments.
For
when I run out of my normal
sort of betting with the Aztecs.
Yeah, because the Aztecs say 2012 is coming.
Right.
And you can bet everything against it because if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. It's all going to end anyway. So sorry.
Hold on a second.
I got that one. That one's a good one.
Betting with the Aztecs. If you bet against them.
Yeah. Almost by definition, you'd bet against the Aztecs.
Correct. You're going to bet against the Aztecs because if the Aztecs are right,
correct.
We're all
you're
dead.
effed.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. I got it. Okay. It took me a minute. This is why he gets his own slide for his insights. So if you have a question for Brad Feld, very simple. You go on Twitter right now. You put #TWiST, TWiST, and you can ask a question. And somebody actually has already asked one here. Let's see, I will pull it up on my screen. This came in 11 minutes ago from Tweety. Let me see if I can get the actual. Okay, David says, ask Brad to speak about the Founders Visa movement. What does the Founders Visa movement do?
So we started a group that we're actually calling the Startup Visa. And so if you go to startupvisa.com, you can see the website, sort of the background around it. The premise behind it is that it should be easy for a foreigner to get a visa to start a company in the U.S.
Of course.
It's virtually impossible.
That's because George Bush is president.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, wait a second. No,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
not
we fixed
president.
that, haven't we? So the way this came about was Paul Graham actually wrote an essay, probably in the spring of this year, called Founders Visa, the case for the Founders Visa. And it was a very short essay, but it basically said instead of the government spending all this money and all this stuff, they should just give 10,000 visas to immigrants and let them start companies. Look at all the great companies in Silicon Valley that have been created by immigrants. And in the summertime, in this year's Techstars program, 2 of the 10 teams had foreigners. One team had 2 Canadians, and they were very, Canadians are dangerous because they can really drink.
Yeah.
And
they know what it's about.
And they know how to play hockey too, but more importantly, they can really drink. And the other 2 guys were from the UK, were English, and the biggest threat from them to me was I had trouble understanding them.
Yeah.
Because of their accent.
You know what they're talking about.
So these were super bright young entrepreneurs, first time. Both came to Boulder for the summer, or all 4 of the guys came to Boulder for the summer. Each of the 2 companies wanted to stay in Boulder. And we spent real time, and I had, I've been exposed to this over the years with H-1B visas and startup companies.
You pay $5,000 to a lawyer, and it works itself out.
You got to sort of deal with this shit. But this was the first time where I saw 4 people who really wanted to be in Boulder, Colorado, ready to start their companies, fundable. One company is now called Graphically, and it's raised $1.2 million. The other company, Vanilla, will presumably announce their funding next week. But they couldn't. The people couldn't stay. They just literally couldn't get a visa to stay and start their companies. Right. So this motivated me to write a post about sort of this problem, and the feedback again, like the angel thing, was very significant. It happened very quickly. Many people came out and said, "I have this huge problem. I mean, you're describing my problem. This sucks." Right. Da da da. And then there were plenty of other people who kind of trolled around. We got to keep America
safe. We have American jobs. We got to protect.
Don't want to take away jobs. Da, da, da.
These are the guys who are going to create 100 jobs each.
That's right. So 100. I mean, 10,000.
Right.
You have
100 in the next 5 years.
You have one that turns into a huge success, and you're talking about the transformation.
People.
So then a group of us, which includes Dave McClure, who's a well-known angel investor and also was a early PayPal guy, is now at Founders Fund. Eric Rees, who's an entrepreneur who's now become known for the lean startup stuff that he's been working on. And if you don't know of Eric and you're a software entrepreneur, you absolutely should. He's dynamite. Paul Kudrowski, who's a fellow at the Coffin Foundation, who's
brilliant blogger. Infectious Greed.
Infectious Greed is his blog. Fred Wilson jumped in from Union Square Ventures. Manu Kumar, who has had several successful companies, PhD at Stanford, and is now a venture capitalist or early stage angel investor, venture capitalist with the fund at K9. Sort of this group of us started talking about this and said, "This is nuts. We got to change this."
Of course.
So we started making noise about it, and where the premise was there should be an easy way for a foreign entrepreneur who wants to start a business in the U.S. that raises a certain amount of money from U.S. investors to be able to get a visa and get going.
Right. Put that amount of money in a bank account, fill out a form, you're done.
That's right. So it turns out, as we start talking, to the politics is a mystery to me, but to my, the friends of mine that are in the House and the Senate, and some of the other people that we know, what we found out pretty quickly was there's a type of visa called an EB-5 visa, which is basically the opposite of what we want. The EB-5 visa, which has been around since 1990, gives a visa to a foreigner who invests $1 million in a U.S. company.
Oh, genius!
Right. So you can you basically are, the idea is to drive investment in U.S. companies, but the person getting the visa is simply the investor. So there's a lot of controversy around that particular type of visa, people buying visas, etc. But the structure was parallel. We want the opposite. We want the U.S. to be the investor, and we want the entrepreneur to be somebody.
This is the talent.
Exactly.
If you have Yao Ming in China, you want him to play in the NBA.
Exactly.
So somehow his visa got approved.
That's right. That's right.
These are the Yao Mings.
He has a tall visa.
Right. Over 7'5".
Over 7'5".
If your team is in the bottom third of the NBA,
and you're tall,
you get the 2 check boxes.
So we actually we formed a real movement, which has been very grassroots, called the Startup Visa Movement. We have had huge positive support around it. We've been very public. We had a recent, sort of good public vetting of it. We had an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that generated a lot of feedback. Paul Kudrowski and I wrote. There's been a lot of sort of mainstream media reporting now about this is picking up. Several people in the House have been very interested in it. in terms of supporting a bill. And Jared Polis, who's Democrat for Colorado, who's also a very successful entrepreneur. You may remember Jared. He was the founder of BlueMountainArts.com, which was very successful.
Bought by Excite for $2 billion?
$800 million, but give or
counting?
take. And then he also founded a company called Pro Flowers, which turned into Provide Commerce, which went public and then was bought by Liberty Media for $500 million. So Jared has had 2 huge entrepreneurial successes and then a bunch of things that didn't work along the way. He got elected to the House last year, or in the last election cycle, and he decided that he wanted to take up sort of, as part of immigration reform is one of the things he cares a lot about. Right. So he's focused on reforming the EB-5 visa, and he's incorporated the startup visa construct into his reform bill there. We're working on the Senate side to get a Senate sponsor, and we're very close to having a very high-profile sponsor on the Senate side. And our idea is that the startup visa is essentially a very powerful mechanism for creating more jobs in the U.S., entrepreneurial jobs that are the key growth. So it's been really fun and interesting. The sort of response from the entrepreneurial community and the venture community has been great. If people listening are interested in helping with this or have stories where they've struggled and gotten through things, you hear these great stories of the 6 or 7 year, these circuitous routes where people eventually end up getting their green card, but it's so absurd.
The one thing you leave out of all of this is the terrorist connection to all these people. So can you comment on that? Because obviously you mentioned all these incredible entrepreneurs. They're obviously in some way connected in Canada to some Al-Qaeda unit or something. There's some reason we're keeping these people out of the country, correct?
It's so absurd. I mean, it is, the cliche. We need a Tyler moment. Tyler, what's a good cliche for throwing the baby out with the bathwater? I mean,
give me a minute.
That's
on
the
that.
Give him a minute on that.
But it's exactly that, right? It's just sort of missing it. Now, the neat thing is,
and of course, we're the melting pot, and all the great things that happened in this country happened because of the immigration that occurred over the past 100 years.
I'm only a second-generation American, right? I mean, my parents came from Russia, Eastern Europe, Austria, Germany, and my grandfather was, an entrepreneur.
How soon people forget.
Yeah. So this is part of our, one of the things that I've decided is interesting to me to spend the rest of my professional life on is simply entrepreneurship and innovation. And the domain I play in is software and internet, but there's lots of things around the process of innovation that I think, incrementally can be improved, and one of them is getting just more. It's not a zero-sum game. None of these people are going to take an opportunity away from another entrepreneur. They're creating more.
Especially when you have a global market, they're going to create the business somewhere, and they could create it in China. It's the same thing with going to university. There are people in Europe who are not interested, or people in Asia who are no longer interested in coming to our country because it's not worth the hassle.
Yep.
And so let's go to Europe, or the Europeans go to Shanghai, and we're basically being left out of the most intelligent people who could fluidly move around the world, except to the United States. The exact opposite of what got us here.
Well, I think it's especially true long term in terms of the power of the U.S. because it used to be that it was very hard in a lot of other countries to start a company that was a technology entrepreneurial company because there wasn't the entrepreneurial ecosystem, funding ecosystem, et cetera. And even just in the last 10 years, the number of entrepreneurial hotspots around the world that have really exploded in terms of their growth is substantial. So the idea that you have to come to the U.S. to start one of these companies is no longer a foregone conclusion. And I think the goal that we should have in the U.S. is that this is still the best place in the world to start a company like this, and so people want to come here to do this. So
when you're thinking of investing in a company, what are the criteria you look at? Are there 3 or 4 little secrets that you look at and say, if this person, I've heard so many different things. Some people like to invest in young people. Some people like to have people who've just coming off a big loss, and it's their 3rd time as an entrepreneur. Are there patterns that you see in entrepreneurship that make you say, this is a safer bet than these other 90% of the companies?
So let me give you a frame of reference to answer the question, because we do have actually a pretty well-defined way that we think about it at Foundry Group. I've made plenty of great investments, and I've made plenty of crappy investments, and I've had lots of things that have been successful and lots of things that have failed. Unfortunately, the magnitude of the success is bigger than the magnitude of failure. So you'd argue that I'm a good investor, or at least I would argue that I'm a good investor. What I've realized over time is 2 things. One is when I'm an investor in something I don't care about, that's dumb.
Right.
And when I'm an investor in something I don't know about, that's dumb.
There's enough things that you know about you can invest in.
There's enough things that I know about, and there's enough things to invest in that I know about that I care about. So therefore, we've got a frame of reference which is very simple. Within Foundry Group, there's 4 partners. We have a $225 million fund that we're investing out of. We've made 20 investments to date. We'll probably make about, somewhere around 30 investments from that particular fund. So on average, we invest $5 to $15 million in a company, maybe invest as small as $250,000 in the seed round, as much as $10 million in the first round. So we're sort of in that, there's not a magic formula for us there. What we do is all 4 of us invest in the same kinds of companies. And the way we evaluate things is through themes. So instead of saying, this partner does consumer internet, and this partner does communications, and this partner does business software, all 4 of us invest in the themes that we've defined. I won't go through the themes in detail, but if you go to foundrygroup.com and you type theme into the search box, it'll show you the themes. The themes are very broad horizontal constructs. So I'll give you one example of a theme, which is something we call human-computer interaction. Our premise behind human-computer interaction is that 20 years from now, the way that we interact with computers will look as different as the way we interacted with computers 20 years ago looks today. In fact, at Feld.com on my blog this morning, I posted a great video from 1963 of cloud computing.
Yeah.
And it's just
the time-sharing one that was from PBS?
That's right. No, it was an MIT. No, it was actually an MIT reporter. It's from the MIT...
Dave Farber sent it to the Intelligent People list. And
fabulous.
Tweeted,
and it's totally...
it's time sharing on this computer.
It's cloud computing with typewriters, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's hysterical. So the whole point is that the way we interact is different. The idea that I'd be sitting here, you'd have a laptop in front of you, you'd have real-time data in front of you, you'd have, this was not the metaphor in 1985. In 2025, this is not going to be the metaphor. So we're investing.
2025, this desk will be just all the things that are coming by the desk.
So we're investing in companies that are changing the way we do that. An example would be a company called Oblong, which is based here in LA. It's in downtown. The founder is a guy named John Underkoffler, who's an MIT grad, was at the Media Lab, got a PhD there, moved to LA to work for Steven Spielberg, and was the science and tech advisor on Minority Report. So all of the Minority Report computer user interface, the Tom Cruise character,
flipping everything
some
around.
Some of it touching, some of it spatial. Right? He had gloves on, remember? He wasn't touching the computer all the time. So it wasn't just touch. All of that came out of John's brain with Spielberg, and then he sort of coded it all up in demo form. And then with a couple of friends, spent a couple of years actually building the core of that software. And today, Oblong's a real company. They got real products, real customers. And they built essentially the first spatial operating environment where you can control a computer in a 3D space in real time. And oh, by the way, it's not just a user interface problem. It's also a massive data problem. So if one person can control a computer, that's interesting.
Right.
But you don't want one person to control a computer. You want N, and you want N in multiple places, so that video conferencing...
Now basically it's a virtual world of surrounding you,
Bingo.
and you've basically made augmented reality turned inside out.
That's right. So that's...
It's the holodeck in some ways.
I look forward to the day, right? So HCI would be a theme. And we've got a series of other investments. A company in New York called Organic Motion that makes markerless-based motion capture. So instead of having to put markers all over the body to get motion capture for... things like in Avatar or video games, whatever, you can just, you walk into the space and their software does it. So we have a series of themes like this, and our approach is as follows. Step 1, does it fit in a theme? And if no, we say no immediately.
Right.
So we like to say, we want to be able to say no in 60 seconds.
Right.
And so a lot of times, we'll get interesting things, but they won't be anywhere close to a theme, and we just say, not our thing.
Not our kill zone.
Part of that is also narrowing our universe to software and internet versus sort of this expanded universe of, oh, well, that's a really interesting scientist doing a clean tech thing, but we don't know anything about that. Then let's assume that it's in a theme, and we'll make exceptions. We're not slaves to the theme. So, great entrepreneurs who we've worked with before, they call us up, we take them seriously, and we stretch our minds, and we're constantly looking for new themes.
Right.
So part of our view of a theme is that it's 10 to 20 years worth of investing opportunity, not the latest, greatest thing that we're chasing. Once we get past that this is interesting, we then spend all of our evaluative time deciding whether or not we want to be partners with the entrepreneur. So a lot of people talk about it as people, and they evaluate people.
Right.
And there's sort of a diligence process or some language around that.
Yeah.
That's not how we think about it. We think about it as, do I want to spend a lot of time partners with you?
Do you want to be on the phone with this person on the weekend?
Do we want to be in the battle together? Because creating a startup's a battle. And all 4 of us go through that evaluative process. And as part of that, because it's in these areas we know so well, the work we need to do to decide whether we're excited about the company is just a natural part of interacting with the person. And we have an internal rule, which is we have to be, every meeting we have to be equal to or greater than excited than the previous meeting, or we're done. So if I have a meeting with you and it's, hey, I'm excited about it, and then my partner Seth has a meeting with you and he's a little more excited about it, and then my partner Ryan and me, or Ryan and Jason have a meeting with you, and one of them is less excited, we're done.
Right.
So there's no arguing within the partnership of, no, let me convince you why. Right? We trust each other's critical analysis enough that we want to each kind of continue to build that momentum, because the easiest time it is to feel good about an investment is the moment before you make it.
Right, sure.
Right? So it's
all promise
it's sort
then.
of that. So we use that approach, and the answer to the specific question of is it A or B or C or D is I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? It's situational. It varies. It moves around. I mean, do I like to invest in young entrepreneurs versus experienced entrepreneurs? I like them both.
Yeah.
You know, do I like entrepreneurs who have come off a failure? I mean, I'm an investor in Zynga. Mark Pincus is the CEO. Mark's first company was successful. Mark's second company was successful. His third company was a painful not
embarrassment.
success.
Tribe.
You know, embarrassment. I mean, he had social.
He was embarrassed.
He had social networking before. Social networking
he was
mainstream.
embarrassed by it. Tribe was brutal for him.
Right, it was hard.
And he tried so many times to make it work, and all he could do was get these Burning Man people to embrace the site and drive everybody else away. And then you know what? Thank God he failed at that, because that
freed him up to be able to put his brain against Zynga and create something that's incredibly successful.
For everybody, as opposed to just the Burning Man people.
That's right. And you know, for Mark as an entrepreneur, it's also been, you know, I'd worked with him before, so I knew him for a long time. It's been fabulous to watch him grow, because in Freeloader it got sold very quickly, 4 months in. SupportSoft, you know,
he's going big this time.
The board and the VCs hired a CEO 2 years in because they didn't feel comfortable with Mark taking the company public.
Right.
With Zynga, I mean, the scale of the business is magnificent, and Mark is doing an unbelievable job as CEO and as leader of the company. And you know, it's great to participate in something like that. So that's an example. We also invested in a Techstars company from last summer called Next Big Sound. 3 founders of Next Big Sound are all, you know, recent college grads. They're all in their early 20s. They're incredibly passionate about the thing they're going after. Super smart, super energetic, and not experienced.
Yeah.
Right. So it's much more about the thing, and is this thing something we feel like we know and love and want to cuddle and be part of?
Right.
And if then, do we want to be with you all the time? That's how we think about it.
And the opposite is true when you're picking a VC. You got to pick somebody who you're going to want to have there by your side when things are going bad. Everybody's a hero. Everybody's great when things are good, when the market is good, when there's, you know, but when there's problems and traffic is down and money is burning, that's when people kind of lose it.
Yep.
Tell me about the worst situation you've ever been involved in as an investor, and I know you were in a couple of the big washouts of Web 1.0.
Oh,
Which one was the absolute worst, most toxic, brutal situation?
Well, there's 2 answers. There's the most toxic and the most heartbreaking.
Go with toxic first.
Okay, because heartbreaking, I think, is instructive also, but heartbreaking.
We're going to do both.
Okay.
But I want to hear the toxic one, the one that was got the most bitter.
Let me think about toxic. Let me describe the context of toxic, though, because this also shapes my point of view. I don't think it's important just for the entrepreneur to choose his investors carefully. I think it's important for the investors to choose their co-investors carefully.
Of course, yeah.
So, you know, when I was at Mobius, and we made about 75 of the investments that I've made have been personal investments as an angel, and a couple of hundred were while I was at Mobius. And then we made 20 out of Foundry. Many of the investments at Mobius that, you know, each partner made investments. So I had a set, but I had lots of other partners that made investments, but I was part of those investments. I can think of a number of situations where the premise behind the company was good, the entrepreneur was good, the situation, nothing ever goes as planned.
Yep.
The company needed more money, things went slower, the dynamics shifted, whatever they were. And as more and more investors got into the mix, the alignment between the investors stopped working.
Yep.
Some investors would have less money to be able to put in future rounds. Some investors got at cross purposes. There were a few situations where investors truly hated other investors, almost couldn't stand to be in the room with each other. And that, when I think about the most toxic,
Yeah.
It's that, because you're looking at the situation. It doesn't actually really matter whether the entrepreneur is great or lousy at that point.
Yeah.
You're fucked.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have an ownership structure of the company that's the employees, the entrepreneurs, and the investors.
Right.
And usually by that point, when you have a bunch of investors around the table, they own a majority of the company.
Right.
And if there's disconnect between their motivations and their goals and their inability to interact, that's a problem that can be just completely toxic. And I've seen entrepreneurs, do everything they humanly knew how to do to try to drive things. I'm an entrepreneur. I can convince these people.
Right. That they like each other.
And
they
there's
want
just
to work
something
together.
else going on irrationally.
Ripping the company apart.
And it destroys the company. And it's a bad characteristic that gets attributed to VCs. I mean, there's a lot of things that VCs do well and a lot of things that VCs do poorly. And on that spectrum, I think one of the things that VCs struggle with is when they're in that situation, you become emotionally invested in a particular outcome that may not correlate with what reality is.
Right.
And those are the most toxic examples I've been in. I've been in a couple of cases where I've resigned from a board and walked away from an investment that I knew was going to fail.
Yeah.
I'd made the judgment it was going to fail. The other investors around the table maybe did, maybe didn't, but they continued to try to do something to make progress, but in the process torturing everybody.
It was famously the industry standard, which I don't know if you were involved in.
I remember that one.
They had term sheets available. They would have made it through the dot-com bust, even though everybody else got whipsawed. Pat McGovern wouldn't do it. The company crashes, according to the stories I've heard. Everybody loses everything. Pat McGovern buys the brand back a couple of years later out of bankruptcy and never does anything with it.
Yeah, it's a pretty sad story. Jonathan Weber, who was one of the co-founders with John Battelle, started a company called TWiST that I put some money in as an angel investor, and I've gotten to know Jonathan over the years. And that's a good example where there was an amazing thing created
and destroyed.
And the impact on the individuals that were the entrepreneurs, you can't underestimate how hard that is.
That crushed John Battelle.
Because it's one of those things where, this is the heartbreak, right? I mean, I was a co-founder of a company. Let's shift to that. I was a co-founder of a company that was originally called Sage Networks, and then it got funded. It bought a bunch of web hosting companies. It then turned into an application service provider, so cloud computing before cloud computing was popular. We went public in 1999. I was co-chairman of the company with a guy named Len Fassler, who had bought my first company. So somebody who was a great mentor. I adore Len. I've done a lot of things with them. Some that have been successful, some that weren't. But the end result of this, we went public. The company was worth a couple of $2 billion in the public markets. We raised a debt financing. The company was never profitable, right? So it was one of these companies that was, losing, I don't know, $3, $4, $5 million a month at one point. We raised a very large debt financing, $160 million. The bankers that were bankers at the time basically said, "Oh, don't worry, it'll convert into equity. You will never have debt.
No big deal. Covenants, blah, blah, blah."
Da, 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 da. And, naively, I was too naive to think it through. It was also something that, we weren't the only company that did. There were about 30 or 40 internet-related companies that raised a convert at that period of time. I think all the converts ended up being what were called busted, which meant they never converted into debt, into equity. They were always debt. If your company is losing that kind of money, you can't have $160 million of debt on your balance sheet. You can't service it. You can't. You're going to run out of money,
right?
And then you can't raise any more money. Your equity's not worth anything. That company, after actually getting to a place where it was a real company through people fighting hard to get there,
years and years of work,
it ended up going bankrupt and was worth nothing, and nobody took any money out. So it was one of those. It wasn't a case where everybody exited early and the company still ultimately failed. It was just really heartbreaking, and it was heartbreaking from the standpoint of both being an entrepreneur creating it, but also being an investor and being linked to. In this particular company's case, we raised $160 million of debt. The IPO, the private capital, is about $300 million. Right? That's a lot of money to think about having economically raised and then not built anything of value from.
Right.
Those are good lessons. So, for example, as an entrepreneur, as a venture capitalist, I'd never invest in a company like that again. That's not the thing I like to do.
Now that's like a red flag for you. Like, I just can't be in a situation where $5 million is being burned a month and there's debt.
I'm sure there are people that like to do that type of investment and can be successful.
I never touch debt as a financing.
It's not me, right? So, one of our rules at Foundry Group that we learned from things like that, right, where most of the companies we invest in, we believe that we'll know whether they're working or not after we've put $10 million in. and most of them should be able to be successful by the time they've raised $25 million.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the zone at which,
Right.
and when I mean successful, I mean cash flow positive.
Yeah.
I don't mean...
Don't need any more money.
Yeah.
You've done it.
So I think that the behavior on our part is driven, and certainly some of the object lessons for me from both toxic and heartbreaking comes back to the filtering I described earlier.
Yeah.
Work with things you know, and work with people you want to work with, and do things you care about.
Yeah.
Right? And
then you've got optimal, you've got as
simple.
much control as you could possibly have in a very uncontrollable, unpredictable situation.
That's right. You can only impact a certain set of things, and you may as well, if you want to take something that's very hard to be successful at anyway,
Yes.
and maximize your chance for success, those are some attributes that help you there. The other thing which for us is important as a firm is we've decided we don't ever want to grow. I think one of the challenges with the perception of venture capital and dynamics around venture capital as investors is a lot of venture capitalists and a lot of venture capital firms grow. Right. And that becomes sort of the mission. Well, it's not really a growth industry. Right? So
it's a boutique industry.
As an investor, I want to make, as a firm, I want to, with my partners, make 6 or 7 new investments every year for the next 20 years.
Yeah. That's enough.
That's a good...
No need to raise a $1 billion fund, $2 billion fund that you'll never be able to deploy. No. And if you did deploy it, it's going to be a miserable outcome. And disappointing. Let's get ready to start the news with Lon. And when we do, what was the most glorious win of your career?
The most glorious win of my career? Well...
When you just go, wow, that was the best win.
I hope the most glorious hasn't happened yet.
Well, the most glorious to date. Okay.
I would say one of the ones that, from a financial return perspective, was, I'll give you 2 examples. From a pure financial return perspective, I was an investor in a company called Service Metrics, which was a Boulder-based company. It was started in 1998. It was bought in the summer of 1999 by Exodus Communications for $280 million. By the time the deal closed and we got our stock, the way the deal was configured, the value of that stock was a little bit over $1 billion. And we had what was a $5 million investment in 18 months turned into a $200 million return. And it was
40x.
40x. So not the highest multiple that I've had, but in terms of length of time.
Yes. What was the length of time then in total?
Less than 18 months. But
18 months, $195 million in profit.
And complete realization, because we sold the company, or Exodus bought the company, we got the stock, and we had no emotional attachment to anything.
Yeah,
no restrictions, nothing. Yeah. So we distributed the stock immediately. The deal was done.
Career maker.
And so that was an early one like that. I think in some ways one of the most satisfying angel, and I'll go to that was a venture investment. Yeah. A really satisfying angel investment for me was a company called Harmonix, which made the original Guitar Hero and then subsequently got bought by MTV and created the Rock Band franchise. The 2 co-founders of that, Alex Rogopoulos and Aron Agozi, Aron was a fraternity brother of mine, but not one that I lived with. He was about 5 years younger, 6 years younger than me. So I didn't know of him, but he knew of me as an entrepreneur. As he was starting Harmonix with Alex, they were going out to they raised about $100,000 from their family and the money they had. They needed to raise $500,000. He just sent me an email saying, "Hey, I'm in ADP, which is my fraternity at MIT, and a couple people said we should get together. I'm trying to put together a company. Would you get together with me?" And I said, "Absolutely." So we went and we had had Indian food or something.
This is pre-launch.
Pre-launch, yeah.
Wow.
This is 1995. And I put together a $500,000 financing. I tossed some money in myself. My first business partner participated. A very close friend of mine, Warren Katz, participated.
And thank you for the call.
Yeah, Len Fassler. And
when that happens again, call Jason.
That's right.
And trying to be an angel investor
I don't even know if I knew you then.
Right.
So what happened was I put together this list of people. My dad was in this round, and the end result was Harmonix struggled until about 2004. So the reason it's such a satisfying one is it's a good example of the overnight successes that take a decade.
Boom.
Right? Guitar Hero came out end of 2004, 2005, and that's when the company
So how many
exploded.
years before that were they chugging along?
Almost 10. Right. So the company was started in 1995, and it didn't really hit till and they released some products. They released a video game here and a thing there, and it was all the innovation they did led up to Guitar Hero. And when they launched Guitar Hero, they had no idea it was going to be successful.
Right.
It was kind of like,
fluke.
We're not quite dead yet. here we go.
We're not dead yet.
And it ended up being, a fantastic investment.
That's unbelievable.
For everybody involved.
I always tell people that, it's like these companies, like Twitter is a perfect example. It was just going like this. I signed up in month 3 when it had no website, and BizStone and Evan signed me up over my phone, and then I'm calling them 2 months later saying, how do I turn this thing off? There's no website. It's like there was no website with instructions. It was just they hadn't put up a website, and then just dun, 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 poof. It's just such a great thing to see that gestation period and then explode. Yeah. And it does happen sometimes 3, 4, 5 years in, and it's another 15-year overnight success.
Absolutely. So that's
Zappos is the other overnight
an important
success.
object lesson to every entrepreneur, right? I mean, some of the big great things just take a long time, and the thing I'm so proud of, as a friend of guys like Alex and Iran is just their absolute persistence to pursue a vision. Right?
Is that the most important quality as an entrepreneur? Is the relentlessness? Is the resiliency? Is it vision? I mean, you take vision.
I don't think there's I don't think there's the most important, and I think for different people, it's different things. We were talking about earlier about the obsession with product and the obsession with the thing you do for your customers. I think there are characteristics, and again, in the domain of software internet, there's characteristics that are key. There's not a single one, and the blend of them is so important. And oh, by the way, you can get some of them right and then still blow it as the company grows. Yeah. With scale, being able to scale with the business. And you can be an idiot
and actually hit the home run. We've seen that too.
So I don't think there's a simple answer.
But resiliency is definitely a key factor.
You have to. I mean, look, everybody who's been a successful entrepreneur, no matter how easy or hard it's been for them, it's a hard thing to do. It takes single-minded focus. It has to be the thing you want to do, period. Yeah. So there isn't any, even if you don't have a great thing and it succeeds, you still worked your ass off. Right. So I think that, that level of intensity and focus and drive, you can't be a great entrepreneur and not have it. It's not a part-time thing. It's not a fly-by thing. It's not a thing you can do when you're doing 9 other things. You have to do it.
Absolutely. Okay, so now a lot of people love this part of the show. This is the news. See Lon's incredible infographic.
Lon
Harris will do the news. So Lon Harris is here. Another week goes by, and Lon has done his news.
I have.
Lon, tell us, what is in the news?
A lot of news this week. Haiti, obviously very much in the news. The internet responded quickly to the tragic earthquake in Haiti this week. Mobile Accord's MGive system and the U.S. State Department teamed up, set up a special number where people could text message in their donations. So far, it's estimated the program has raised over $5.2 million for more than 500,000 mobile phone users. Anyone watching right now, an example, you can text the word Haiti to the number 90999, and you'll be charged $10 on your next phone bill.
Let's do it.
Right now, 90999 and the word Haiti. That goes to the American Red Cross.
Hold on, I got to do a SMS. I got to go to my BlackBerry here. I don't do a lot of SMS. So wait, the
word
tell
Haiti.
Us all again. To what's the number? To what number?
No, you just text the number 90999.
90999. So
that's
it's
correct.
90 and then 3 nines.
90 and then 3 nines. The word
Haiti. And then
Haiti.
I put Haiti, which is Haiti.
That's correct.
Now I've done it. I sent it.
That will charge you $10 on your next phone bill. Okay, that $10 went immediately to, well, not immediately, but that $10 went to the American Red Cross. Some of the mobile providers were not prepared for accepting donations with this speed and on this scale,
look at this. And now it says, to confirm your $10 donation to Red Cross International Response Fund with a reply with a yes. Mm-hmm. So that's great. So it actually, this did work, and I respond with a yes. And so I will ask everybody in the audience, listen, we're all listening to this program. That means you own a computer, means you own a phone. If your phone costs $300 or $400, what's $10 for somebody who is really suffering right now?
Yeah, just lost everything.
Just lost everything, and you've still got your iPhone. So
and interestingly,
go ahead and spend the $10. I mean, it's 2 goddamn cappuccinos at Starbucks. Really, I mean, people are going to buy. People are going to replace the battery in their iPhone for $100.
I mean, $10.
$10 nothing. Even
movie ticket. I don't.
I've been trying to get Lon to buy a blazer for 35 episodes, and he donated $10.
Even I don't.
Even he. I
donated some more too to Doctors Without Borders, which is a great organization. People should go to their site. They're doing a lot of great work.
That's a good mitzvah. And go ahead.
So I was saying a lot of the cell phone providers actually had to tweak their systems to make this work. There's usually a 90-day delay for these kinds of donation systems, which they're all trying work really hard to close that window.
Yeah, well, it's not like those telecom companies have the money laying around to do anything like this, right?
Well, Verizon Wireless has advanced $3 million on behalf of its users that they have donated.
And I guess AT&T would advance the money, but I guess their network's down.
Right, they tried, but the 3G is not working.
It's not working.
Right, so.
When they get their 3G up and running, AT&T will afford it.
So I guess you sort of answered my question by actually doing it live on the air, but is there a concern about entrusting charitable donations to large, faceless corporations that are not usually in the nonprofit business? Would you feel more secure making a donation directly to Red Cross, the Yelly Foundation, which is Wyclef Jean's foundation?
I don't know. Of course, I don't have a problem with it because it came from you, and I'm sure you vetted it.
I did.
And
I did it myself.
Will there be some fraud or shenanigans with this stuff? Yeah, but not in a widespread way. And it's too big of a risk for a big company like AT&T or Verizon to do something nefarious because of the bad PR, because there's somebody who's the CEO of that company. And as you know, like if somebody here were to do something stupid and then I have to answer for it, I'd be really upset. There's that fear of God in the people at AT&T that if somebody screws up getting this money, they're going to be fired. And some CEO is going to have to go on CNN and say, hey, we're schmucks and here's why. So I think it's fantastic. And Causecast, which I'm on the board of advisors of, provides this kind of infrastructure to not only like big causes like this, but to everybody where we can just donate. So check out causecast.org, and they're doing it.
And they're doing the impact section on Huffington Post as well, which has been a major source of information this whole time.
The Huffington Post wanted to, because they have 25 million people, they wanted to do charitable giving, and they put Causecast on it. It's been going very well for them. But yeah, this is a whole new level of fundraising that is completely fluid. I'm actually surprised it's not being discussed more, and it's like the first time I've actually heard the number, although I did hear you could do something like this. Why isn't this on every TV program with a PSA and like that would be? I mean, it's really just spreading through Twitter, I guess. But
Twitter and Facebook actually are the two largest sources of this kind of information disseminating out there.
So that's the way it's supposed to happen, I guess.
This interesting, the MGive system that they're using to do all these text messages. The previous biggest event was American Idol. They're the ones who handled the American Idol fundraising drive.
Well, I mean, American Idol's right now. So can somebody, who's the guy who runs American Idol? Simon Cowell?
Well, yeah, Simon Cowell, and then he's got
Fox?
his partner.
Rupert Murdoch?
Oh, what's the guy's name?
Well, anyway,
I'm blanking on the...
It's
another Simon.
Maybe people should tweet that
That's it, Simon Fuller.
Why don't they tweet that the money from the votes for the rest of the season, everybody tweet this right now, it's your Geary, the rest of the votes for the season, the money from that on American Idol should go to Haiti. How's that for an obvious idea?
What about all the blog posts people are running on ad-supported sites about Haiti? Should that all go to? That's something that's been debated.
We did a virtual. We did a virtual giveaway in Mahalo.
We did,
and it was $400 immediately.
Over $400 Mahalo dollars,
right?
Which works out to about $350 US.
And Mahalo will match that, of course.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, why not?
That's an announcement. That's the first time.
Yeah, let's not make too big of a deal out of it.
Okay,
give us another tech story. And by the way, I mean, it's not a political show, but I was pretty outraged to see two incredibly stupid comments, just as a total aside, that spread very virally on the internet.
I'm assuming you mean Rush Limbaugh and Pat Robertson.
I mean, did you hear these two quotes, by the way?
No, I saw the tweets about the quotes, but I didn't see the quotes.
Unbelievable. I mean, the first quote from Rush Limbaugh is that
Obama...
I don't even know what it is. How could it be unbelievable?
Yeah.
Okay, good point.
It's very consistent if you follow Rush Limbaugh's career.
But the second one from...
Pat Robertson.
No, I want to hear the Rush Limbaugh one.
The Rush Limbaugh one is Obama is helping the people in Haiti to curry favor with the light-skinned black people in the United States.
Light-skinned and dark-skinned.
Okay, so both.
Yes.
As opposed to just saying the black people or the African Americans.
The light-skinned and dark-skinned black communities.
The people who are in between light and dark, they're not being... Anyway.
Isn't this just typical?
And which just led me to think, as opposed to George Bush, who let all the black people drowned in
his own country.
In his own country.
He wasn't even 90 miles away.
But really, that's why he's helping them, because they're black. Or he's not helping the people in Haiti because they're dying in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and it's the right thing to do. Obama and the United States is helping to get more favor.
To curry favor.
This is why I don't watch television.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Or the radio. You got to turn off the radio, too.
Who are the people who would actually put this person on the airwaves to say something so insane? But the same people who put Pat Roberts, is that guy's name?
Pat Robertson.
Pat Robertson.
To be fair, he's on the 700 Club, which is the Christian network, so it's not like the public airwaves.
I mean, as somebody who grew up Catholic, this is a total disgrace.
I think it's a disgrace. I think this is one case where actually even the mainstream American, even the fundamentalist Christian groups are coming out and saying, look, this guy...
Dude, slow your roll.
This is not what we stand for.
So you have to, I mean, so what does he say?
The atheists were very happy about what
Pat Robertson had to say. As an atheist,
speaking as an atheist, I feel...
This was Christmas.
This is not the 700 Club. This is the Atheist Club.
Right.
This is the Atheist Club here.
He's doing their bidding. Yeah,
in other words, the
absolutely.
people with over 100 IQ points.
The Jewish and Catholic Atheists.
The best quote I saw on Twitter was, "I'd like to take 700 clubs to Pat Robertson."
Yeah. No, I mean, he basically says
Haiti made a pact with the devil.
that Haiti made a pact with the devil.
Yes, and that's why this happened.
And this happened. But he says it, well, this is a very...
True story.
True story. That's the best part.
It's a very true story.
It's a true story.
It's very true.
People don't know.
People don't know it, but if you look it up on the interwebs, it's very true that people made a pact with the devil to get rid of baby Doc Duvalier and now the devil has come and destroyed their people.
This is what you get.
This is what you get. And this woman next to him is like a 30-year-old co-host that they put with him, like this senile guy. And she's like, it's a true story.
Sure.
She's just thinking to herself, what is oh my God, why is this person, did he take his meds or whatever? It's so sinister and
It's evil. It's an evil thing to
so
say.
evil and disgusting thing to say when people are suffering that you can only laugh because the guy is so senile that you're just, it's almost like when you're 90.
Your defense mechanism is to laugh because it's such a horrible.
Well,
It's almost like a 90-year-old.
I tried to be constructive. I tried to make a deal with the devil to fix the Wi-Fi on my iPhone last night, and he's apparently
He's
not
not
interested.
talking. He's
Not
very
interested.
busy right
No.
now.
Very
No.
strange. Yeah.
He's in Haiti.
You know what?
Wait till he
Haiti,
gets
yeah.
back.
The way he feels about it, the fact that he locked it into AT&T, the devil's pretty happy with what he's done to the iPhone. And the fact that the App Store is locked down, he's got to deal with Steve Jobs and the CEO of AT&T. He's pretty happy with his iPhone effort right now. Let's do a real story. Come on.
Move on. Real story.
Come on.
Yahoo Shopping's API. Yahoo announced on their developer network blog this week that they're shutting down their shopping API following an agreement with PriceGrabber, who is now going to provide similar content for their Yahoo Shopping site. Developers currently working with the Yahoo Shopping API will have to go start all over again, getting permission from PriceGrabber to use their content. This is, of course, part of a larger trend at Yahoo of farming out products, such as turning over their social networking to Facebook, pulling in Microsoft Bing for search results, and on and on. What is Yahoo's core business at this point, and is this all entirely motivated by short-term stock value and saving money?
It is part of an overall effort to shed anything that is not core. The irony of that is the core was search.
Yeah, what is the core?
Well, search, email, and news, and they're number one in a lot of other verticals on ComScore, sports, finance, whatever. But as we were discussing earlier with Brad, it's not a product-driven company anymore. Now it's a company driven by somebody who's trying to cut costs and basically somebody who's brilliant at working with Wall Street and has done a good job in turning it around in that way, doubling the stock price, getting the Microsoft deal done. But you cannot, there is no technological company right now that's succeeding without a product visionary at the helm or a product visionary and a business visionary. So if you look at Google, you have Eric and Larry and Sergey. You look at Apple, you have Jesus, who can do both, who's a business and a product head. Just go right down the line. I mean, even News Corp, Rupert Murdoch's the news guy. I mean, he understands the news business inherently, and so he actually knows how to do that business. They need to get somebody to sit next to Carol, who is a product-driven president, who obsesses over product, and who can speak credibly to the API communities, to the developers. I would say it's a bit of a disaster there, but that was like last year. Now I think they're actually shedding some of this stuff that they can't do it well, so why do it? I think is probably what they're thinking. What can we do well? And let's do that really well and try to build in that. I don't know, what's your take on Yahoo right now?
I think it's pretty consistent with what you just said. The dynamics of Yahoo is that for a number of years it's been virtually impossible to do anything with Yahoo externally that's meaningful. And I think, we won't know for another 3 or 4 years whether the resulting thing has sustaining economic value or not. But, the idea that the innovation vector is strong is just gone.
Yeah.
And so, there's a huge number of people that use it. It's, if you look at AOL and you think of AOL sort of in its innovative peak versus AOL today.
And the innovative peak at AOL was 97, 98, 99?
Yeah, pre-2000.
Pre-2000.
In that time frame.
Let's call it 98.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very interesting, not just what the business was, but a lot of really interesting things coming out of the company being done. Some being done really well, some being done not so well. You look at the thing today, and it's just a shell.
Right.
It's still a business. It's still around.
Yeah.
But
Slowly
it's just a shell.
shedding users, slowly shedding revenue. And it seems like that's the trajectory Yahoo's on. However, these companies can be saved. If you look at Apple, perfect example. When Steve Jobs took over Apple, they had 15 different types of computers. I think they had 15 product lines or 16 product lines. And he was like, let's make 3 and make them really good. It may be what Carol Bartz is using as a roadmap. Yeah. Steve Jobs got it down to 3 or 4 things. Maybe she'll get it down to 3 or 4 things.
I think it's easy to second guess in real time that kind of a transformation. Really, until the story is told, it's hard to know. And the important thing that's going on in a positive way at Yahoo is something had to change.
Right.
Current course and speed that it had been on for the last 3 or 4 years was not sustainable.
Right.
And so something's changed, and that change may end up in something that does, end up being useful and valuable long term, and it may end up in something that sort of fades away. Who knows?
Another story.
2007 TechCrunch 40 company Cake Financial has been acquired by E-Trade.
What?
Following an alleged
when
bidding
did that
war. This was just yesterday.
I didn't even know. I was so busy with the Open Angel Forum.
That's why it's the news.
That is the news to me. Cake Financial is a great product.
Following an alleged bidding war may have also included the Motley Fool. Cake was launched with the ability for users to share their investment portfolios with their peers. It has since added new features like the Cake Deck social stock tool and an automated premium service.
I love this company from the beginning. This is from TechCrunch 40, right?
Yep.
This was 2007,
3 years ago.
TechCrunch 40.
A lot of people don't know, but that was behind the scenes one of the favored. Definitely in the top running for.
It was in the
prize.
running to win, and it actually was Mint who won.
Yeah, and I remember when Mint won, which obviously they deserved and everything, and the Cake team was. They took it harder than most. I think they knew they had something very cool.
It was a very difficult decision because you had PowerSet, Mint, and Cake, and all 3 were great. And what's the price?
We don't know that they have not.
Price not come out yet.
Price is not available yet. And actually, TechCrunch didn't even have a guess. Usually they guess.
This will take E-Trade from a Web 1.0 company to a Web 2.0 company. It's a brilliant acquisition for them.
So it seems like E-Trade will be absorbing the Cake team and technology, not necessarily integrating the users whose data is going to be destroyed. They're going to reimburse all the people. They're closing down Cake. They're not moving the users over to E-Trade.
What?
Actually, the article you just clicked on said they're shuttering. That's the terminology that I saw.
Wow, well, that's bizarre.
They are, yes. E-Trade acquires and shutters Cake Financial.
I mean, I guess that means they're going to relaunch it at some point. But was the product not doing well or something? Or is there some liability?
The traffic had been flat for about a year and a half, they were saying.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's a limited number of people who want to use it. So just so people understand what the premise of it was, you can go look on TechCrunch 50 at the video, or type in Cake Financial video, TechCrunch 50 into Google, you'll find it. You would put in your credentials from E-Trade or other places. It would say that's a verified trade, and you could put your trades out there in real time.
Yeah, it was basically sharing your portfolio
like
with
Blippy does
your
or Mint does. So and then, eventually, I think they wanted people to then, I could say, I'll follow Brad's portfolio, and you guys had an investment like that too, wasn't there? Or Fred Wilson?
Fred has one in co-investor.
Co-investor.
Which he did with Union Square Ventures, and Spark did it.
Ah.
That has some. Sounds like it has some
characteristics. It's basically very
similar.
Co-investor. So that's bizarre, but keep going.
So some have speculated this was sort of a fire sale, and that there's a lot of concern out there, or questions out there, like, did this deal provide any return to Cake's investors?
When a business is shuttered like that, like iMeme, that does indicate the possibility of a washout or a break-even or whatever. What do you think? Is that...
Yeah, hard to tell. I mean, the speculation on both sides when it's an unannounced or undisclosed deal is usually just it's usually wrong.
Yeah.
Either direction. Gosh, this was a nothing, or gosh, this was huge.
That's ridiculous.
It's like nobody ever really knows until you dig into it. The fact that they had flat traffic for a year and a half,
for a while,
clearly it was a technology team buy, not a business buy. And I don't think the company had raised very much money, right? It was relatively small.
It was a pretty
amount
small,
of financing.
Early
I thought I saw reported, which is that means that you don't have to have a particularly big exit for it to be okay for everybody.
Yeah, and also going into people sharing their trades, in the year when the stock market loses 60% of its value, probably not a great time.
I think most people didn't want to share their trades, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted to hide under the bed.
No, I'm telling you, Citicorp, too big to fail. I'm doubling down. Woo! Okay, last story.
Last story, wow.
Well, give me a story.
Let's do My Town. Foursquare and Gowalla may have the hype, but the geolocation iPhone app My Town looks like it has the numbers. According to TechCrunch, My Town... According to TechCrunch, MyTown already has 500,000 users and 31 million check-ins. That works out to about 6 check-ins per second compared to 1 check-in per second on Foursquare. It's a game, much like Foursquare and Gowalla, sort of like real-world Monopoly. So when you check in places, you can actually spend virtual currency, buy properties, and then when other people check in there, MyTown. And then when other people, it's an iPhone.
It's an iPhone app?
Yes. And then when other people check in there, they pay you sort of virtual rent. And then based on the popularity of the place, the rent goes up or down.
So it's Monopoly for your iPhone.
It's Monopoly with real locations for your iPhone.
I will check it out. I've never heard of it before. It's quite possible that it's done well. It's a game.
It is a game.
But these are real-world check-ins?
Right. So let's say I use my virtual currency to buy Mahalo HQ. Every time somebody checks in at Mahalo HQ, they pay me a little piece of their virtual currency. If Mahalo HQ takes off and becomes a very viable location, that rent goes up, or I think, yes, that rent would go up. So TechCrunch, MG Siegler over at TechCrunch is theorizing that the astronomical growth is due to Apple featuring the app for 2 weeks after its launch as one of the sort of highlighted front page apps. But it seems like there's got to be other factors for why this is so suddenly popular.
Yeah, and I don't know what they are.
Especially under the radar.
Very bizarre. I don't know. Maybe it's a bunch of kids playing it or something. But I'll have to check it out.
Well, we'll have a real-time review in 5 minutes.
We will. Brad's playing with it now.
If AT&T actually...
If AT&T actually allows you to download it. Yeah. Keep going.
You want to talk about Google China? Is that I don't know. I didn't know if that was startup themed or not.
No, of course it is. It's very interesting.
Google has been widely reported has threatened to shut down its Chinese site, Google.cn, due to concerns about hacking and censorship. They've also decided to stop doing their own censorship on Chinese search results. Specifically, Google is alleging that China conducted a state-sponsored or state-sanctioned infiltration of its email networks and proprietary source code. The Chinese government has responded by downplaying the threat, calling on Google to respect its rules and regulations and what they call the country's legal traditions. Google currently has a 30% share of the Chinese internet stock market, and we should note the Chinese government already blocks...
Wait, stock market or...
search market, excuse me. And we should note the Chinese government already blocks access to the company's YouTube streaming video services along with some other Google products. Who do you think is going to blink first? And is it worthwhile for Google to risk its sizable business in China for a sort of taking a stand like this?
So they have 30% search share in China. It probably is pretty meaningless on a cash basis, or maybe not that huge, because in China there's not a huge advertising base right now. And so while the business is growing over there, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be material for... I wonder what that is to their revenue in Europe and the United States, where advertising is much more refined.
But you would think locking that in now, I mean, if they disappear in 5 years, 10 years...
I'll tell you what this really has a lot to do with. Larry and Sergey, very principal founders, and they have Eric Schmidt as a CEO, but Larry and Sergey still run that company. They're putting them two together, largest shareholder in the company, many more shares than, say, Eric. And Larry and Sergey are principal guys who are quirky and want to run it a certain way, and supposedly Sergey is the one behind this. And, you know, I see these guys all the time at the TED conference or this conference or that conference, and they're at Davos. And I think it's probably one of those things where, like, if we are going to sit here and talk about freedoms and be Google, and I think maybe it just got to the point where, like, okay, we're being attacked by the people who were acquiescing to it and it just didn't feel right to them. And at a certain point, it's not about money. They have so much money personally and the company, they don't know what to do with it. That's the word at Google is, I've heard this from multiple sources now, is that Google has so much cash and so much free cash flow, they don't know what to do with it. They don't want to go buy huge things because they don't want to see like they're taking over the world, but the amount of cash coming out of that AdSense machine is so great, there's nothing they can buy. There's nothing $20 million, $30 million, $40 million. That's why AdMob at a $750 is nothing to them. Just buy it and keep it away from Apple. So I actually think this is a very personal decision. And if you look at Yahoo, it's very ironic because Jerry Yang is Taiwanese, and Yahoo acquiesced and gave over email addresses, supposedly, of people who were political bloggers and whatever. Dissidents. And I sympathize with Jerry Yang because it's a very difficult decision, and also his employees would go to jail if he didn't do that. And so, you mean, if you don't give over those dissidents' name, then you all go to jail. But there is a very big issue with the internet is very binary. You know, it's very hard to block the internet and police it the way they're trying to. So there's so many mirrors for Google. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. but there's a lot more to this. There are 40 companies that were hacked, and Google supposedly today.
Juniper announced that they were one of them today.
Yeah, and Google pre-announcing this, they're doing this, tried to get 40 people to do it at once to come out against the Chinese government, and those other people didn't because it would affect revenues too much. This is like a William Gibson book. We're going to war over cyberspace. It's literally a war over cyberspace. They're stealing Americans' trade secrets. They're using the cloud computing to capture people and probably put them in jail and torture or kill them if they're dissidents, which is what happens in China sometimes. And it is mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, Hillary Clinton had to make a statement on it. You think about that. There's hacking is going on, and the Secretary of State has to address it in 24 hours after it. That's like something from a science fiction film 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
There's actually two books, two separate books that are worth reading if people are on the show are readers that are so instructive around this phenomena. One is a book called Breakpoint, which is, they're both science fiction or cyber thrillers. Breakpoint by Richard Clarke, who was the National Security Advisor.
Yeah.
Right? And he wrote a novel, a factual book after he retired, and like 7 people bought it. And then he wrote Breakpoint, which has been a huge success, and he's got a new book called Scorpion's Gate. He's fabulous. He's a fabulous writer describing all this stuff in a novel format. So that's one. I would pick up Breakpoint because it's directly to this. The other book, which it's actually 2 books now. The second one just came out. A guy named Daniel Suarez came out with a book 2 years ago called Daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N. And just came out with a book, the second book in the series called Freedom. And Daemon is the technical side of the problem and all the cyber hacking and cyber attacks, and it's fabulous. I mean, just extraordinarily well written. All the augmented reality stuff plays into it, and it's just very, very clever. And then Freedom is the societal impact of what got started in the first book.
D-A-E-M-O-N.
D-A-E-M-O-N. They're both hugely relevant for this kind of a problem.
Right.
You know, it takes the 10 years, 15 years ago science fiction, William Gibson, Bruce Sterling type futures, and takes today and goes forward a decade.
So in terms of daemon, we're talking about like a daemon running on a server.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
Exactly. And it's you know, there's a video game virtual world I mean, it's an extremely well written book. In fact, Suarez is a very popular book at Google. A friend of mine introduced me to it, who's now at Google. He used to be at Feedburner, Rick Clow, who's friends with the author and was an advocate of it. It sort of has made the rounds, and I think Daemon at the moment in time they came out may have been one of the best cyber thrillers ever in terms of reflecting
Freedom.
Reality. Well, his first one was Daemon, and then Freedom was the sequel.
And which one do you say?
They're both great.
Okay.
You read them in order. You read Daemon. You can't read Freedom without Daemon because you won't understand sort of the context.
Got it. So anyway, combined with the trade imbalance, combined with the fight over natural resources and oil, it's beginning to make me nervous again. You know, after this whole financial crisis gets cleaned up a little bit, you start feeling like, gee, the world's a little bit better. And then you have Yemen jumping into the scene with terrorism, you know, a foil plot that, you know, we can debate all day if it was a real threat or not.
But to add on to that, we have known for a long time that Al-Qaeda is active in Yemen.
Of course.
Since well before 9/11 even.
Sure, but I mean the reality of an attack taking place with somebody who just left Yemen and was given the bomb in Yemen, and who is not a citizen of Yemen, who is a citizen of the Nigeria, and was living in the UK with a dad who's a president of a bank.
Right.
It starts to feel like a William Gibson slash who's the guy who did Jurassic Park?
Crichton.
It feels like a Crichton-Gibson mashup now of international proportions, and with our trade imbalance with them, you know, maybe they want our debt. They're attacking our companies. Are they attacking our companies so that we don't attack their economy and take over and have them there as customers? I mean, it seems to me like if I was a government official there and my friends were running domestic companies that were CEOs of those companies, the best thing to do is to get these American companies out, steal their trade secrets, and make your own products.
If you're interested in the last 2 minutes of what Jason just said, read Daemon.
Yeah,
I mean, it's, you know, we live in this incredibly complicated world, and I've said for a long time the way to understand the future is to read science fiction from the past.
Yeah,
because they're wrong about a lot of things, but there's an awful lot of things that come true. And if you go back far enough in time, they usually get things like space travel wrong, like things are going to happen faster, and I'll be able to fly from here to Europe in 4 minutes. My teleporter and jetpack doesn't exist yet, but all of the societal dynamics around computing and information and power and control, all of that stuff, we're in it now. I mean, the next 5-10 years of society is going to be really impacted by the way that this stuff evolves.
We're only 9 years away from replicants. Right. Nexus 6 we have the Nexus 1 just came out, and Nexus 6 will be here in 2019.
Replicant.
Blade Runner.
It's a replicant and a jetpack, right?
Put on your back. Well, I mean, the Nexus 1 is obviously, if you've seen Blade Runner, it's Nexus 6. That Blade Runner takes place in 2019. So we're 9 years. It's going to be, that means the next Google phone is going to come out every 18 months or so until 2009. Wow. Give us the last story.
Last story.
It's fun doing the news, huh?
It is. I enjoy
like
the news.
People love the news part.
We can do, let's see, I'll give you a choice. There's Apple acquisitions, something called SARkMark, which is really ridiculous and kind of silly, and NewsCred.
Give us the Apple acquisition.
Apple acquisitions. Since Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, they've only acquired 11 companies, not a huge number, and 3 of these were in the last 5 months. According to Business Week, the company has hired a Goldman Sachs investment banker, Adrian Perica, to serve as a dedicated mergers and acquisitions specialist. So what is driving the company's new focus on acquiring other companies, or is there a new focus on acquiring other companies? And what, if any, major deals do you think we'll start seeing from Apple?
There is one major deal that's out there. That's Adobe. That's a transformative deal, because all those Adobe applications would be great as Apple applications, and Adobe and Apple have been at it for a while now, between Flash and Safari, and will Flash be, all that stuff. Photoshop. So Adobe is a no-brainer, and that would be a large transformative acquisition, or to have those things built into the thing. And you have iPhoto and you have Photoshop. I mean, there's going to be a lot of overlap, but it could be pretty transformative. Losing AdMob as a deal, I think is probably burning Steve a little bit. He probably really wanted that because they have this huge iPhone infrastructure and this huge ecosystem. The ecosystem in there is applications. Applications are bought, make revenue 2 ways. They're being bought, and there's advertising. Advertising is a much more powerful way to do this than buying it. I mean, people are going to, right now, people have no problem spending $1, $2, $3 on these things. When there's free versions of a video game available for nothing with advertising, and there's another game that's poker or chess or whatever, a race car that costs $5, what do you think kids are going to do? They're going to take the free one with the advertising. Sure. So the advertising games could wipe out and wash out a lot of the paid stuff. So maybe I think probably those 2 factors could do it. Also the fact that I think they have $30 billion now, and they're throwing off $2 billion a quarter in profits. I mean, they don't know what to do with the money.
There is this notion of capital allocation, which is if I spend some of this money now, can I increase the value of the business long term? And when you don't have a lot of cash, it's harder to make that trade-off. When you have a lot of cash, it's easier to make that.
Yeah.
It's the same conversation you had with Google, where they made, I mean, Google interestingly went through a period, a couple of years ago where, they were very acquisitive, and then they stopped.
Yeah.
In the downturn. Well, some digestion and some sort of, everybody said, we don't really know what's going on, and we're just going to put the brakes on.
Yeah.
And then they become acquisitive again. And so I think you have companies that go through different phases. Microsoft goes through these phases. They like to say we acquire the same amount every year.
Not exactly
Let's
true.
look behind the numbers really and see what's happening. I think Apple has historically not been.
When they do buy stuff, they buy small stuff. They buy 20-person company, 30-person company, like the one that did the touchpad that's supposedly going to be.
Well, and then every now and then they do $1 billion acquisition.
Yeah.
They do a. Tell Me or something like that. But I think it's interesting to see Apple. I think it's very healthy. I think the idea that Apple would be a meaningful participant in the in sort of acquisitions of entrepreneurial companies.
It's awesome.
There's no negative to anybody in the system about it.
But they are very much a we made it kind of shop. So this is
they're going to be very selective, and they're going to be very focused on what they want to do with it.
I mean, big rumor for 3 or 4 years now that they want to launch a search engine, which I think they're going to. I don't have any inside information. However, I think they're going to have a search engine.
Pineapple.com.
Pineapple.com, absolutely. No, I actually think they're going to have a search engine because the way Google is coming at them, they would be a nice balance of power to be able to come back at them and say, well, we have our own mapping and our own email, and
maybe they'll license Bing.
Maybe they'll license Bing. Perfect. On that note, can we do a couple of things? One, let's thank the sponsors. Gosh, Bing, Ustream, DNA Mail, WebSpy, and PowerVPS. Go ahead and thank them on their Twitter accounts. Bing doing a great job advancing search, DNA Mail for your Microsoft Exchange and Google App Email support, WebSpy monitor all the server activity, employee internet access, mail servers and web hosts. You don't have to do it in a creepy way. You could just give the feedback to your employees like, hey, here's let them see what they're doing all day so they can manage their time. You know, some of those people are on Facebook playing Fishville for Farmville. I mean,
those are the right games for them to play. They should
I know
play
that they're Fishville,
more
but
Fishville
I mean,
and
can
Farmville.
they play them for under an hour at work and then spend the other 7 hours working? For God's sake?
Fashionista helps me.
All you have to do is have
two
two monitors on going at the same time. You can play.
Speaking of that,
Farmville
I had
on
an
one
employee
side.
watching The Simpsons at work, and I told him, like, what are you doing? And he said, I'm watching The Simpsons.
It relaxes me.
And I was like,
I do a better
okay.
job.
I
I
said,
program
well, other
better.
people listen to music. I can watch The Simpsons. I'm like,
Was that Mike? Is this an old Mike story?
no, it's not old Mike. There's another person. I just thought to
really?
myself, I remember when I started at Sony and it was 93, 94, and I would listen to my Walkman at work, and some older people were just like, you can't listen to that at work. You brought that to work, you know? And it's just a different world. I mean, anyway, thanks to Power VPS as well. And let's give that Nexus 1 phone away, Alex, to somebody who, that'll be like the 5th one we've given away. And then we have to pick a winner for the review contest, so I'll ask Lon to do that after the show.
Sure.
And pick one today so people can see who the winner is. Let Scott Simcoe know. He's the official blogger.
Absolutely.
And in about 15, 20 minutes, we're going to have a special episode with the 4 companies from the Open Angel Forum. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks, Brad, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jason. It was awesome.
Thanks for the insights, Tyler. That's the end of the show.
Close us out with one.
Too bad. And that's the end of the show.
That's it.
Spiked out, I could trip a referee. Tell by my attitude that I most definitely from.